A very good morning to you. Well, the work starts here for the new Prime Minister.
Sir Keir Starmer takes the keys, not that there are any, to number 10 in a landslide victory.
And as the new leader appoints his government with the NHS, immigration and housing top of the agenda.
And this all comes as the new Prime Minister and his new cabinet prepare to meet for the first time later this morning, about 10 o'clock.
And feeling blue, well, Rishi Sunak licks his wounds and the worst ever results for the Conservative Party, but displays graciousness in defeat.
I've heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss.
Meanwhile, what does Boris Johnson say about all this? Well, he's saying don't reform. He's warning the Tories to avoid merging with Reform UK, and he offers advice on how to fix the party.
And divine intervention. Well, Joe Biden claims only the Lord Almighty would make him drop out of the US presidential race, as he describes himself as a black woman.
Parents of the missing teen, Jay Slater, are given permission now to hire a private team in Tenerife to search for their son. And they hit out at trolls who have accused them of mismanaging their GoFundMe page.
And should we let criminals serve prison sentences at home in a bid to tackle our overcrowded jails? Well, we'll be debating that later in the show.
It's all eyes on Dusseldorf tonight as England's quest to reach the semi-finals of Euro 24 gets underway. Switzerland stand in the way of the Three Lions, who saw France and Spain make it through last night. And at Wimbledon, meanwhile, Emma Raducanu eases through to the last 16.
Hello, good morning. A little bit of a disappointing weekend to come, particularly for July. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
A very good morning to you. It's just gone 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast. Well, I don't know how you have got the energy to still be here. You've been on for the last 3 or 4 days. Whenever I've tuned in, there's Martin.
Yeah, well,
Have you enjoyed it, though?
It's been amazing, yeah. It's been a great new studio. I think the coverage has been great. Chris Hope, he's on later on today. He did 21 hours yesterday. The fella
but he's enjoyed every minute.
Well, that's what political editors live for, general elections, the full fallout. And if we thought we were going to have a day off of politics, it's just beginning again.
Yes, I know. Oh, it's absolutely not over, is it, really? And I wonder if you felt different this morning when you woke up. You know, did you think this is a new dawn, a new day, a new government? Yeah, I mean, it's 14 years since we had a change of government. Yeah. So a lot of people will think, well, certainly if you're a Labour supporter, you'll think, wow, go for it. Tell you what, though, Aidan's here. The sport was incredible. Yeah. I mean, I had the luxury of being at home over the last few days, and switching between the politics and the sport has been quite something. I wanted to be at home with something like a studio set up like this, with lots of different screens.
I always think that when England are going well in a major tournament and the optimism is high, even though England aren't playing particularly well in terms of what they're doing on the pitch, it almost overshadows everything. We had a momentary interlude with the election, but we're back on football again today. Even Wimbledon gets overshadowed, but Emma Raducanu is going great guns, and we'll see how she does in the second.
Yeah, actually, the tennis wasn't overshadowed at all for me. It's just been the most magnificent. Thursday, nothing but Brits playing on centre court.
I know.
And then, of course, Andy Murray's farewell.
I was quite surprised by Cam Norrie, weren't you, beating Jack Draper in 3 sets.
Yeah, I mean, everybody did so well, and then although it was sad, and the way they bid goodbye to Andy Murray was brilliant and glorious.
Did you have a tear in your eye, Anne?
Oh gosh, yes, of course. And you know, and we were talking about what it's like to have been his brother as well, watching his amazing success and seeing him lauded like that. But they're clearly, I mean, love each other to bits and are very used to playing with each other.
I interviewed Andy Murray when he was about 17, 18.
Really?
I think it was. Yeah. There was always, you know, he's not really changed. Nobody came into his life and said, listen, you've got to be this person or that person if you want to get this kind of commercial deal. He was always the same all the way through his career. And eventually his mentality was born out.
Sue Barker said to him, what do you think you'll do now? What about commentary? And, you know, there was a groan at home. We all went, oh, no. I mean, that's the last thing you'd actually think for him. No. And even he said, oh, I don't know. I didn't really enjoy it last time I did it, sort of thing. You think, no, I don't think commentary's for him. But that was lovely. And then Emma Raducanu yesterday. Yeah. Where did she find it from?
I know.
It was so different. It's
incredible. You notice I'm keeping completely silent on this, because I've been so immersed in politics.
Yes,
all I've done is lived and breathed politics. So actually, I'm looking forward to it.
There was a world happening that was other than politics, but for you, it's been nothing but. start. And it's been so fascinating.
I stayed up through the night, actually.
Did you? Yeah, I tried, and then at some point I just thought, this is crazy. Yeah, but it was very... What was the best moment?
Best moment was...
Well, not best, maybe most memorable moment.
I like the surprises. So Nigel Farage tried 8 times. This is 8th time lucky. That was, a fantastic moment just to see political change. The SNP, getting a real kicking, which I think
who would have thought 10 years ago that could happen?
5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah, you wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, I thought Rishi Sunak resigned with real dignity. Actually,
yes,
you can say he didn't do the best job. I thought
he looked shattered, didn't he?
Yeah, his passing speech was, I thought, was lovely. And
how can it not take it out of you, though? It
would do.
How? It's just it's an impossible job, isn't it? Ask Gareth Southgate.
Yeah, well, and as we now know, the King said to Keir Starmer, "You must be exhausted," which was a nice line.
Yeah, that's win from the King.
Interesting that they released the audio as well. They never used to with the Queen.
You had to lip read.
But yeah, that's right, you did, didn't you? So there we go. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new government, new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and he's going to host his first new cabinet meeting today, about 10 o'clock, we reckon, and he'll begin to put in place his agenda, I suppose, for the next 5 years at least.
Yeah, but let's take a moment to remind ourselves of what he promised yesterday in his first speech outside 10 Downing Street.
If you voted Labour yesterday, we will carry the responsibility of your trust as we rebuild our country. But whether you voted Labour or not, in fact, especially if you did not, I say to you directly, my government will serve you. Politics can be a force for good. We will show that. We've changed the Labour Party, returned it to service, and that is how we will govern. Country first, party second.
And of course, all of these events could only come about after the Conservatives were trounced in the polls with record losses of 251 seats. And here's what Rishi Sunak said outside Downing Street.
Following this result, I will step down as party leader, not immediately, but once the formal arrangements for selecting my successor are in place. It is important that after 14 years in government, the Conservative Party rebuilds, but also that it takes up its crucial role in opposition professionally and effectively.
Well, joining us now is political strategist James Frayne. Morning, James. So here's a simple question, but it'll be interesting to know your answer. What were your most memorable bits of the last, 24, 48 hours? And why?
The last 24, 48 hours. I think in my profession, the exit poll looking like it was going to be enormous for reform and then in the end quite disappointing for them. There's going to be a bit of a post-mortem on why the polls weren't as accurate as people were expecting. But I think having lots of independent candidates in Parliament for the first time really was a real big surprise and will change politics.
James, 10 o'clock this morning, the first cabinet meeting. A few eyebrows were raised. There were no surprising appointments, but some of the names have certainly raised eyebrows. David Lammy as Foreign Secretary, very, very outspoken of his outright contempt for Donald Trump, who, if the bookies are right, if the direction of travel is right, looks like he could be the next US president. That could be an awkward first meeting. Ed Miliband, here's a guy who's addicted to net zero. And he's going to be in charge of our energy policy. Wes Streeting, Health Secretary, the NHS broken. There's a lot of work to do, and that starts today.
It does. It's interesting. Labour naturally have been pushing that this is all about change. It's a change election. They're going to change the country. And as you two were talking about before, it's a new dawn. It's a new day. But they've just inherited the same problems that the Conservatives were grappling with just a week ago. These problems of NHS waiting lists being very long. It's very hard to get a GP appointment. Growth is weak. Debt is high. Immigration is uncontrolled. Boats keep arriving. The government is simply going to have to get to deal with these problems straight away. Otherwise, they're going to face the same fate as the Conservative Party. They'll be as unpopular as the Conservative Party within 6 months if they don't make progress on those 3 areas particularly.
Yeah, absolutely. No, do go on.
So all I was going to say was this idea of change is just a sort of, at this point, words. They have to make progress on those 3 areas.
Yes, they've got to impress us, haven't they? Or they'll face, as you say, the same problems. But with that incredible majority, will it really matter? I mean, will they just storm ahead with what they want to do anyway?
I think it will matter because, as we've seen, only 5 years ago, the Conservatives had a very, very big majority themselves. And until really, the late summer, early autumn 2021, the Conservatives were riding high. I mean, Keir Starmer came under pressure from his own party. They looked like they were going to remove him because he'd been apparently such a disappointing leader of the opposition. So politics can swing very, very dramatically these days in particular directions. And they can swing very dramatically when, I suppose, these problems that the public have been so obsessed about have been around for a long time. So this idea that the public will cut the government slack, that there'll be some sort of honeymoon, I think is wrong, because they think, rightly, the NHS has been broken for a long time. The border system has been broken for a long time. We have no economic growth and debt is high. Labour haven't got these sort of shiny new problems. Labour have inherited these old problems, and therefore people are going to be expecting progress very rapidly, not least because Labour, again, this is not a criticism of them, that's politics. Labour implied that these problems would go away if they were elected, and now's the time to stop talking and start acting.
OK, James Frey, thank you very much for joining us this morning on Breakfast. Appreciate it.
Well, we're going to go on talking about it, aren't we? Joining us now, former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall. Morning, Claire.
Morning.
Hello. Now, do you feel it's a new dawn, it's a new day, everything's going to be possible, or are you really seriously worried?
I think I need to get over the tiredness of the last sort of 48 hours. But it's interesting to see the appointments being made, and these are the same names that we've heard on the shadow benches for some time. So it's no surprise that they're in the cabinet. I think what is interesting is the appointment of James Timpson as Prisons Minister. I think bringing somebody in from the outside who's got some expertise is a really good way of starting. But everybody else, we kind of know who they are. We kind of know what to expect from them. But we have to be able to let them try and get on with the job. Even though it's not the result I wanted, we need to give them that opportunity to see if they can make a difference.
And Claire, the post-mortem must begin at CCHQ, the worst Tory defeat in 230 years. 12 cabinet ministers got the boot. That's a record. And now all eyes are on who is the next leader. Rishi Sunak bowed out graciously, I felt yesterday, but the runners and the riders is very interesting. We've got the pro-Farage right-wingers, the Bravermans, the Jenricks, the anti-Farage right-wingers, the Badenochs, the Patels, and then the centrists. Which direction do you think the party is going to take? Because you and I, many people have been saying for ages, the Conservative Party seems to have forgotten how to be conservative.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The party needs to decide what being a Conservative actually means. And I think that's the problem. And now we're down to the same arguments, the same sort of groups of people, the same sections of the Conservative Party, just a much reduced pool of people. We now have 121. The arguments are still going to be there. The debate is still going to be there as to how best to pull the party together again. But I think that we're going to see a few weeks of infighting, of jostling for position. And you've still got to understand what's going to win the hearts and minds back of the voters. And I don't think at the moment Conservative MPs are in that position. So expect a lot of fireworks, a lot of sharp elbows as people come forward. It's never going to be dull in politics. And sadly, that's what we all live for.
I found what I found was utterly amazing watching all of the news coverage from home was that, all right, Keir Starmer may have won, Labour Party's won, stonking majority. The Conservatives have done historically badly. But who is dominating the conversation? Every time, it's almost the first thing that comes up, no matter what the interview, and it's Nigel Farage and Reform UK. They're all talking still about him and almost allowing him to dominate the agenda.
Yes, it shouldn't have been a surprise that Reform did well, but it was. And I think the establishment underestimated quite the power of a party like Reform when people are angry and they feel they're not being listened to. But we need to start scrutinising now that there are 5 Reform MPs within Parliament. We need to scrutinise the policies, what they're going to be offering, just like any other party. So we need to put down the sort of celebrity status and the big results. The real work starts now, and they have to be able to stand up their policies and their ideas in Parliament. They have to be able to get that message over to the general public. And I think that they are looking for a long game and the next election in 2029, but they have to be able to stand up what it is they want to do and how much better they'll make people's lives.
Claire, I'm going to press you on this point about the fork in the road that awaits the Conservatives. Do you go down a more right-wing route, which is what a lot of voters wanted? That would have got rid of the need for Reform UK even in the first place. The Brexit Party only came to exist because the Tories weren't getting Brexit done, and so the Reform UK Party has come along to try and make the Conservatives actually be Conservatives. Still, there's talk about a potential merger. I spoke to an MP yesterday who said we need to talk to Nigel Farage. Others vehemently saying absolutely no chance. That guy has no place in our party. And now he'll be on those green benches, irritating the heck out of the Conservatives all the time. What's the route forward for the Tories?
Well, for a start, they need to understand a consistent message. They want to be able to come together. And it's all very well to say you need to move more to the right wing because of reform and what's happened. When you're out there talking to Conservative members in different parts of the country, that message doesn't always come through. What they wanted was a more centrist, centre-right government, and that's what we hadn't offered. And I think that people get really stuck in trying to make the Conservative Party be a branch of reform, when the Conservative Party actually needs to look at why they were popular, what policies were popular, and then look at how a Conservative can make that happen. So I'm not going to give you any predictions about which wing is going to win out over this, because I think it will be quite a bloody battle. But centre-right, I think, is going to be the right direction, sensible, consistent and efficient.
We'll wait for that.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a bit of a bloodbath first, isn't there?
It might be a long way.
I don't know. People are already, matching themselves up, aren't they? OK, Claire, lovely to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Go and get some kip. Everybody's looking a bit baggy-eyed this morning. Not you, of course.
I am.
But it's had that effect, hasn't it? Now, if it's had that effect over here, what about the other side of the pond? My goodness. Just when you thought, they might be able to paper over the cracks, President Joe Biden does it again. This time he has said that only the Lord Almighty could make him quit the presidential race, as he faces, of course, mounting pressure to do so.
We're not going to do that.
You sure?
Well, yeah, I'm sure. Look, I mean, if the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I'll get out of the race. The Lord Almighty's not coming down.
And this all comes as the US president claims to be a black woman in his latest gaffe on the campaign trail.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
What?
What do you make of that?
You have to play that several times and you still don't quite get it.
No.
Well, joining us now is the former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations, Steve Gill. Good morning, Steve. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, it sort of does.
As you guys want to take a break from your chaos in politics, you go, hey, let's look at it could be worse.
The thing about it, Steve, is, OK, it's a gaffe. We know that he's gaffe prone. But the big question still is, can this guy be on the ticket? Can he still run the country, even within his own camp? That debate on ABC television last night was meant to steady the nerves of a nation. Did it?
Not one bit. And this is beyond gaffe. There is a serious incapacity that Joe Biden is enjoying. We saw it, and unfortunately the world saw it in the debate last Thursday. Both our friends across the world and our enemies like Kim Jong-un and Putin and President Xi, everybody saw this. And I think it puts not only America in danger, but the world in danger to know this guy who's the leader of the free world is incapable of behaving and acting. And I think there's been too much in the U.S. focused on the politics of it, whether he should be the nominee for the Democrats again. He shouldn't keep being president with the level of incapacity he has shown, and he's not shown any improvement over the last 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, but just as Martin said there, he used that word that, you know, gaffe prone. And maybe we can all understand that overall, he doesn't make gaffes. It's just the occasional one. And we live now in a social media world where you make one little gaffe and it'll be replayed and go viral, as they call it. I mean, maybe we should just shrug our shoulders and say, he knows what he's doing. He's got an administration that knows what they're doing. Let's not get hung up on a few gaffes.
Well, I don't think we have an administration that knows what they're doing. When you look at energy policy that has gas prices twice what they were, food prices, bread, eggs, milk, twice what they were when he took office. I mean, you look at the border, millions are flowing across the border illegally, and in foreign policy, it's not working. So I keep telling people the personality is the least of the problems with Joe Biden. It's the policies. And you don't fix that with Kamala Harris or any of the other Democrats. They will pursue the same failing policies. So you don't fix that. I will say some of the gaffes are over pushed. He was talking about the fact that there's no traffic congestion when he drives around now. When he was a senator, he had traffic. Now, doesn't have any. That was not a gaffe. He was making a joke. Maybe it was a joke most people didn't understand. But he's talking about that as president, you just kind of breeze through everywhere you're going.
OK, Steve, just to sort of try and figure out if this was a gaffe or something altogether more surreal, let's listen to that clip again.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman to serve with a black president.
Now, Steve, I know we live in an era where we can all be whatever we want to be. We can all live whatever life we want. We can all transition. He might think he's a black woman.
No, he doesn't. That's not fair.
But the fact of the matter is, we know he was actually talking about Kamala Harris. But he just lost his way, and it's nakedly abundant. He can't string a sentence together. And if you can't string a sentence together...
No, but see,
Steve,
is that fair? Because he obviously can.
The evidence is there.
But yeah, but he doesn't talk like that all the time. I just wonder if we're not getting a bit too reactionary.
But I think the fact of the matter is, Steve, if he's making those sort of gaffes when he's not really under a lot of pressure, it was a pretty friendly interview last night. There wasn't a brutal cross-examination. There wasn't an audience. There wasn't Donald Trump in the studio. Can this guy be trusted with the big things like the nuclear codes?
Well, except Stephanopoulos pushed him several times. Are you willing to do a neurological exam? And he dodged and pushed back every time. But look, if I've been drinking and I'm in my car and the cops ask me to do a breathalyzer and I know I'm going to fail it, I'm refusing the test. Joe Biden knows he will fail a neurological test, so he's doing the right thing and refusing it. I do think the black woman thing was more getting tongue twisted rather than that he doesn't know what he's talking about. But he shows the other instances during the debate when he's just totally lost, he trails off. He gives every bit of evidence of somebody who's in mid stages to late stages of dementia, and that's what's scary.
Yeah, and that's what's become the story too, isn't it? Steve Geer, it's lovely to talk to you again. Thank you so much for giving us a little relief from our own politics this morning. There's certainly enough around, isn't there?
And that story is just going to be bigger and bigger and bigger ahead of that election on November the 5th. It's got to be a crazy show.
And you know, November the 5th is not that far away.
It isn't, yeah. Bonfire night.
The months are just going, yes, absolutely. OK, we'll move on. It's 6:23. A very good morning to you. Now, the family of Jay Slater apparently have been told they can bring in their own search and rescue teams to look for him. That's according to the police in Tenerife.
Yeah, money from the GoFundMe page of the family will be used to hire that team.
And that's because police have called off the official hunt on the 30th of June. But the family, of course, have said they're going to stay on that island until they find their son.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is the former head of Lambeth Missing Persons Unit, Mike Neville. Mike, this saga rolls on and on. First of all, it was a huge island-wide search. It had helicopters, drones, dogs, and then suddenly flipped back to that Airbnb property, perhaps, where they should have been focusing on all along. And now we have another dramatic new twist.
Yes, it keeps going on and on, doesn't it? And I think, you know, my personal theory is he's in that park somewhere. You know, he's lost. He's taken some substances, possibly. He's had some drink. He's confused and he's exhausted. But there's all the background noise as well. When you know that somebody's stayed with somebody who's a convicted drug dealer who got 9 years for drug dealing, that is a substantial sentence. So that is a lot of drugs. Then you need to look into it. And the police have seemingly been too quick to dismiss, and say that things are conspiracy theories. But there's all that background noise around that, and then there's the theft of a Rolex watch. And initially, it was portrayed as though, Jay's a young lad, he's 19, he's on his first holiday. But then it comes out he's convicted of a very violent assault. So as well as doing the search of the park, then the police should be looking at all this background. Is there anything else going on? And they don't seem to have done that. And it's been badly handled in that sense.
Well, either they haven't done it or they're not telling us about it, which suggests which means there's a reason they're not telling us very much at all. Could it be that there's another investigation going on? I mean, I'm thinking of, a different team of police actually already investigating some sort of drugs thing going on in Tenerife. I mean, could it be that you've got two sets of police who are clashing here and the press aren't being told anything?
Well, what strikes me on is that they've already said that there is no criminal investigation. So they've actually declared that. That's what strikes me as odd. I agree with you that you would think there would be a parallel investigation, but I don't see why they would ever come out and actually say there's not a parallel. Sometimes the police will do things in the background, and when you're investigating serious crime or serious incidents, for example, a murder. If a murder victim, is a violent gangster or a drug dealer or something, then the police often don't say that because the public will think, oh well, the guy got what he deserved, and they won't say that because they want the public to give you information. And the other thing that's really come out on this is how badly, as you said, the press have been handled. It's like some sort of Life on Mars 1970s scenario where they're not coming out and telling the press what's going on. And the result of that is the vacuum gets filled. And so they could do so much better, have a press conference, a senior officer telling the public and the media what's going on. But it's a small island. I think they're really handling it like this is something for the Spanish people. It's an international incident and they're looking foolish in my view.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up brilliant there. Mike Neville, thank you very much for joining us, as ever, and giving us your expert insight. Thank you.
Yeah, and still it goes on. Yeah. And for the family, it must be a living nightmare. Yeah. And they've been accused of holidaying while they're out there. I mean, come on, they are a family with a child missing. No matter what you think of his past, he is their son, and they want to know what's happened. So I don't think it's a holiday for them in any way at all.
Yeah, fair enough. But it is true what Mike's saying. So many detectives that we've had on the show over these past few weeks have said the police just aren't keeping the public in the loop. And when you give a vacuum, it gets filled with misinformation.
Yeah, and horrible trolling.
That's it.
Yeah. Which is terrible for the family again. Anyway, the search goes on. At least it's a good use for the money in the GoFundMe page, isn't it, to keep a search going? OK, we need to find out about the weather. Oh, the weather. I was asking you this morning, did it feel like a new dawn, a new day? All I got overnight was thunder and lightning.
Yeah, and I told you that I left my laundry out for 2 days. It was so wet, my washing line collapsed.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, I didn't want to bring it in because I'm too tired. I'm not putting the heating on. The washing line collapsed.
And this is July. This is July. Shall we blame it all on the weather people? Here's Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A cool and showery weekend to come. There could be some water on the roads. We do have a rain warning in force for parts of Scotland this morning, particularly northeastern Scotland. But there's also some heavy outbreaks of rain across eastern areas of England, parts of North Wales too. And many of us are likely to see a shower through today. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around as well. In any sunshine, though, it's not going to feel too bad, particularly across the south coast, where we're a bit more sheltered from the breeze at time. So here we could see 19, possibly 20 degrees, but for most of us will be in the mid, possibly lower teens, with some fairly persistent rain lingering, particularly across northern areas into this evening. So further heavy rain to come throughout this evening, particularly across northeastern areas of Scotland. I think the heaviest rain there will still be through this morning. It will get a little bit lighter through the day, but there could still be some localised flooding issues. Showers across Northern Ireland, much of southern Scotland into northern areas of England as well. later on this evening. Fewer in the way of showers as we head further south, particularly towards the south coast. There will be a bit of a breeze through the English Channel as well throughout this evening too. Now, overnight tonight, that low pressure that's bringing that wet weather will slowly push away to the north and east, and behind it we will see clearer skies developing as we head into Sunday. Quite widely across the UK, we start to pick up more of a westerly breeze, so across western areas with more cloud around here and some showers too, a milder night. But in the clearer skies, we could be down into the mid-single figures. But that does mean there's a bit more sunshine around across eastern and some northern areas to start the day on Sunday. But across the south and west, heavy showers will push in through the day. Now, these could turn quite heavy. They could last a little while as well. The winds aren't quite as strong on Sunday, so that means the showers won't move through quite as quickly. So a further risk of some water on the roads, and again, temperatures a little below where they should be for this time in July. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, brace yourselves, 'cause it's time now for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, an incredible 30 grand tax-free, which means you get the lot and do whatever you want with it. And here's the details that you need for your chance to become our next big winner.
Summer could be a scorcher with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Right, do stay with us. Still to come, Aidan McGee will be here with all your sporting news, and there's a lot of it, including, of course, some sort of football match tonight at 5 o'clock. But the tennis has been wonderful too. And there's other sport, isn't there?
F1.
Grand Prix?
Yeah,
something like that. So plenty to talk about. That's next. This is GB News Breakfast with me and him.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Prince Harry, he's been opening up about the death of his mother, Princess Diana, while speaking to the founder of Armed Forces charity, Scotty's Little Soldiers.
Well, the Duke of Sussex joined 50 children who were being supported by the charity and urged youngsters to open up about their grief, saying, if you suppress it forever, it will eat you away inside.
Well, let's speak to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who joins us in the studio. Cameron, Prince Harry has spoken quite a lot about grief and bereavement from his mother's passing and the trauma he had. Did he say anything new that we haven't heard before?
And the difference here was, instead of kind of talking about himself, which clearly we've heard a lot of in the last 3 years from Prince Harry, with his memoir Spare and the Netflix series, I could go on, he was putting the spotlight back on the charity and on Nikki and her story. So it was almost like having the old Prince Harry back, and also thinking about like what could have been if he didn't step back as a working member of the royal family.
That's so fascinating. In many ways, he was sort of stepping into his old role in this. It was sort of performing a duty that he would have done back before the days of Megxit.
It is kind of like before the days of Megxit. He's been heavily involved in the charity for a good decade now, but when he came back for the Invictus Games celebration commemorations of the 10 years of Invictus last month, he spent time with 50 or so children, and he talks about how first instinct of a child when they lose a parent in awful circumstances such as that is, I have to be really sad for the rest of my life. And he talks about how those children who've lost parents through conflict feel like that, and how actually it's okay to be happy again later on in life when you've had the support, and realising that the parent you've lost would want you to be happy later on. So that's the message Prince Harry was trying to get across here.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Well, it all kicked off during the break, and welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Martin. And
Absolutely. Sport. Yeah, Aidan McGee is here, and there's a lot of sport around.
Morning to you both.
Yeah.
Morning.
We got to start with the Three Lions.
Yep.
You know, I'm naturally a pessimist, as you know. If England do well, it's a bonus. Can they finally wake up and the Three Lions start roaring?
OK, so just to explain to everybody, I mean, that's the thing. Just there are some people at home who will think, what's it on? It's 5 o'clock this afternoon, and it's us against Switzerland.
You're good. You're great at this because we get carried away.
Well,
and you get to mention the
but
basics.
I've noticed sports people do that. When Aidan comes into the office in the morning, suddenly they're talking about something. You think, what
are you on about?
What time is it on?
This is football, 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Exactly.
Quarterfinals.
It is at quarterfinals.
It is indeed, yeah. Dusseldorf, 5 p.m. today. Yeah, England have to raise their game seriously. I don't buy into all this stuff like they have to play better later in the tournament. Yes, they do have to play better, but it's not taken as read. I remember in 2006, they'll get better. They didn't get better. They went out on penalties as usual in quarterfinals. 2010 limped through to the second phase, got beaten by Germany 4-1. They didn't lift it. So it's not as easy as just to say we're in this gear now. Let's go up to the next gear for the next game. In theory, that's what can happen, but they need to change seriously, and they've got to change the formation, I think, as well. And that's what Gareth said.
Well, there are rumours that they're going to do that.
Yeah, the FA were briefing journalists last night in Germany, saying that they're going to go to a back three basically. So that means
they're going to a what?
Back three.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a formation of 3-4-3. So that allows you to play Phil Foden and Jude Bellingham just behind Harry Kane. So that makes the most of their attacking potential. At the moment, it was one or the other behind alongside Kane. So also, it's been forced into this position because Mark Gahey, who's been our outstanding defender, is suspended for this game. We've had a reprieve as well with Jude Bellingham being given
that's good news,
£25,000 fine and a suspended sentence of one match suspension.
25 grand to him's like about tenner to you or me.
He probably. I remember going to Man United disciplinary 20 years ago at a hotel in Heathrow. I think Ronaldo got fined £3,000. Ryan Giggs got fined 7, and I phoned the sports editor at the Sun. He goes, "They probably had it on them, didn't they?"
Yeah, just in the back pocket. Yeah. So, sorry, you said there was a suspension of one game, then?
Yeah, so it's a suspended ban. So but he's one booking away from missing the semi-final. But Gareth Southgate has said to him, "Keep playing with emotion. That's what gets the best out of you." And in terms of our opponents today, Gareth Southgate did a media conference yesterday, as is normal, 24 hours before the game. And here's what he had to say about our opponent, Switzerland.
We've played opponents who have made it very, very difficult for us. And as we've seen in some of the results they've had in subsequent games, they've given other teams problems as well. And there's been a lot of expectation on the team in the early part of the tournament, especially.
So that's the England manager, Gareth Southgate. It's his 100th game in charge today.
Oh, is it?
He didn't want to talk about it much yesterday, and I thought that was quite peculiar, because I thought that was a chance to just absorb a bit of pressure, get people talking about him as opposed to the players, because as we said during the break, playing for England is the big-ticket event. In terms of pressure, there's nothing quite like it, which is why a lot of them freeze when they get to this level of the tournament, and that's why they're employing psychologists.
But if they change the format the way you've just said, does that mean we should hopefully see the ball a bit nearer the goal that we're meant to be putting the ball into?
The problem is, Anne, they don't seem to have a problem getting to the final third, but it's all sideways, pedestrian, slow football. There's no dynamism. Now, looking at the whole of the tournament, we're not the only team who does this, right? So, with the exception of Spain yesterday, they were good. And I think we're seeing the effects of fatigue. We're seeing these players playing 65 matches in a season, all different competitions, as well as for their countries. And that, just scientifically, then the evidence is all there.
Ask Roger Federer, ask Andy Murray, ask any of those top singles particular players, the Wimbledon big guys, ask them about pressure and stress. They are playing so many championships, and then gladiatorially they get out on centre court and they can play for 5 hours.
Yes, but it's not
Who's
quite...
the better athlete?
Well, I think they're probably on a par, actually. I do. I think if you looked at the numbers, and people will be able to tell you quite easily in terms of distance covered. I mean, I think there was a stat going around a few years ago. 10 miles is the average that a player runs in a game, a footballer runs the game. They only have the ball for 7 seconds.
I wonder if, though, it's not really about the physical side, it's about the mindset.
The mindset.
And I just think Gareth Southgate there was so low energy. He just talks
I know.
It's like, come on, mate. Like, rev it up. Put it into the team. The team need belief, and that's what Switzerland actually have been playing brilliantly. On paper, England are far, far better. But on the pitch, they've got the will to win.
England, Switzerland in the quarter-final, even a month ago, you'd have bitten their arm off. You really, really would. You know?
OK, well, we'll talk with tennis next time as well, because Emma Raducanu did so well yesterday.
I think she's got... I did say last week, you said to me, are you being a bit hard on her? Maybe she responded to my criticism.
Well, do you think that was it? Something made a difference. Something made a difference. And when they asked her what made the difference, how come you were so good today and not the other, last year or whatever, she said, you've got to win the day. Yeah. And I thought that's interesting, because that's basically, that's therapist speak, isn't it?
I know.
But perhaps she's got something there. It's rather a nice phrase. You've got to win the day. Even if you don't win the game, but at the end of the day, have I won my day?
Makes sense.
And I think that's rather a nice phrase.
I'm going to think that's
It was very therapy speak, but it's worked for her.
Yeah. I think she actually just listened to Aidan McGee.
Well, maybe it's just that.
That's
She
what
didn't
it was.
say, though.
You two should start listening to me as well.
She didn't say. Maybe next time she will. Do stay with us. Obviously, we've got more sport to talk the rest of the programme, but right now it's time to go through the papers with Cindy Yu and Kevin Schofield. They'll be back here in a minute.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back. Stefan Kyriazis has, as ever, been to the theatre and saw one of the most successful performers of the modern age, one who has made his name in different genres on television and is always a magnetic presence on the stage. About whom are we talking, Stefan?
We're talking about James Corden at the Old Vic for The Constituent and its Traverse staging. So audience on either side, and it's a fantastic experience. But also it's been done this time to bring everything in a lot and make it quite intimate, because you just have one simple set. It's just a table, office space. This is a new play by Joe Penhall, and it's addressing very, very current issues of safety, especially for people in public service. Doctors, nurses, teachers, and of course, as you know, politicians that are at risk and being attacked. So we have Joe Cox, Sir David Ames, and we have politicians talking about cancelling their surgeries, not wanting to appear in public, teachers being threatened. And James Corden plays an ex-serviceman who is going through a difficult divorce, dealing with a lot of PTSD, also feeling very much like fathers are overlooked, and he wants to fight for their rights. And an old school friend is a local MP, played by Anna Maxwell Martin. And he goes in to start talking to her, and it starts off quite chummy and jovial, and then it darkens and darkens. He gets quite aggressive and frustrated. She wants to help. She's an absolute idealist. This politician sense of we don't choose who we work for. You know, we are here by duty to work for everybody in our constituency. It spirals a lot. I have to say, Corden, sensational. Really? He really is a fantastic actor. Of all of them, he's so natural, and he has the most difficult role where his character is shifting all the time and becomes potentially quite threatening and dangerous, but then there's also a beautiful catharsis at the end.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Scone.
you made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching and listening to GB News Breakfast with Martin and Anne this morning. Let's take a look at some of the newspaper front pages. What are they about? Well, The Guardian leads on Sir Keir Starmer saying he's going to fight every day after becoming Prime Minister, and he'll have to.
And The Times reports also on Sir Keir Starmer saying that his government will get to work immediately.
The Mirror, as you can imagine, says that the new Prime Minister pledges to rebuild Britain brick by brick. Now we begin, it says.
And the Daily Telegraph, meanwhile, leads on Wes Streeting declaring the NHS is broken hours after being appointed the new Health Secretary.
The Sun, meanwhile, says that Sir Keir Starmer will serve everyone, including those who didn't actually vote for him.
That's Downing Street now. They're having a first cabinet meeting around about 10 a.m.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone will be arriving quite yet.
No. But it's interesting how Sir Keir Starmer said he wouldn't work past 6 p.m. on a Friday.
Yeah, but he did.
And now he's working on a Saturday morning. Fair play to him.
That's what I was thinking all day. I was thinking, I wonder if he's actually going to come out and say, thank you very much for voting me in. I'm the new Prime Minister, but I'm clocking off at 6. But he didn't. Yeah. Joining us to go through what's making the news is Assistant Editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu, and Political Editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield. My goodness.
Top of the morning to you both. So,
Yes,
Cindy,
indeed.
there's probably only one place to start. Sir Keir Starmer, and the overriding emotion is, OK, it's a new dawn, it's a new start, we want change, but by Jove, there's a lot of work to do, and it starts today.
There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of problems to fix. Not least, you know, I don't just blame the Tory government on this. We've gone through a pandemic. There's a Ukraine invasion. There's a lot of stuff that means that this country, in various different departments, the in-trays are going to be really, really busy for his new cabinet. So good that they're meeting on Saturday morning. But yeah, all of the front pages are all about Keir Starmer, as you've just gone through. And I thought it was a dignified speech, actually. I thought it was a dignified speech seeking to reach across to people who didn't vote for him, which was a lot of people, because he only got about 30-something% of the popular vote. And so I think he needs to keep that going, and he needs to actually start delivering on some of the things that he's promising. If the whole problem with the Tory government is that it wasn't delivering, then Labour need to come in and show that they can do different things differently, and that it's not actually just the problems are too big for anyone to handle.
OK, well, one of those things that they've got to do something about straight away, or at least show that they're attacking it, is the NHS. And Kevin, you've been looking at what Wes Streeting has been saying on the Telegraph front page, and Wes Streeting, who nearly lost his seat.
Yeah, very close, 500 votes. That would have been one of the shocks of the night.
What was the closest one? Didn't somebody win by 18 votes?
Yeah, it was 15 votes in Poole or somewhere.
That's right.
Well, yeah, but Labour won astonishingly. But there were others like Richard Holden, the Tory chairman, won by 20 votes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many are ultra marginals now.
And the Reform, the fifth Reform candidate, they went for a recount, didn't they? My goodness, that third recount was worth going for.
Yeah, absolutely, because they won. Yeah, there's another one up in Scotland. There's recount doesn't get the result today. I think the Lib Dems expect to win that one. But again, there's so many very, very close-run battles.
So anyway, Wes Streeting has got the job.
Yes, he has got the job. It's quite an interesting gambit on his first day. He goes in and says, basically, the official policy of the Department of Health now is that the NHS is broken. And he said his job is to fix it. I think it's the type of thing that you can only say when you've just started in the job. You know, when you've not been running it for the last 14 years, it's not my problem. You can go in and say, it's broken. This time next year, he won't be saying the NHS is broken because it'll have been on his watch. So,
do you think it's a useful word to use?
Well, I just wonder what it means
Just think, if you work for the NHS at the moment and you're doing a good job, it's not very nice to hear, is
Absolutely, yeah. They'll be thinking, well, hang on, we've been working incredibly hard, pandemic, etc., etc.
It wasn't broken for me when I needed it.
Well, quite. And the new boss comes in and says, oh, by the way, this place is a shambles. So, yeah, morale-wise, it's maybe not a great thing to hear, as I say, the new Secretary of State from saying, but, you know, NHS is always near the top of people's priorities. I think a lot of people will probably agree. A lot of people, well, you're right, and a lot of people have very good experiences, a lot of people don't. So they'll welcome the fact that the new minister's come in and saying this. However, he's setting the bar very high. If it's broken now, he has to make sure that it's not broken.
Well, the first thing is the junior doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got on the phone to them straight away and said, right, we're going to meet next week, we're going to thrash this out. But again, it's not as if the Tory government wasn't trying to get this fixed. You know, they've been trying for a very long time, and
Although
the
they haven't
dispute
been
is going on.
talking to them very much. They sort of they go through bouts of refusing to talk.
Yeah, and in theory, a Labour government should have better relations with a trade union, you would think. So there might be a bit more goodwill on both sides, but at the end of the day, it'll be judged on results and whether or not he can actually get this deal done.
And Cindy, you know, since I were a lad, there's been 24 hours to save the NHS. It's always been broken. It's always been on its knees. We've heard this time and time again. The talking has to stop. What's the solution? This is a big problem because Wes Streeting has dallied with this idea of a private NHS partnership. And then Sir Keir Starmer, during the leaders' debate, said no chance, not even if a loved one was on a deathbed, would I go down that route. So it's all fair to say it's broken, we've inherited a mess, but what will the solutions look like?
Yeah, that was rather inconsistent messaging, wasn't it? And it was almost like a boast. I'd rather a relative die than use private healthcare.
But I think that was personal rather than.
But he's the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was a slightly odd line of questioning anyway in the debate, and it was a slightly odd answer from Keir Starmer. As you say, Martin, it kind of goes against what Wes Streeting has been saying. You know, as a Labour government, they do have more political room to kind of dabble with this kind of reform, new ways of doing things, because if the Tories were saying this, they would be hearing screams of privatising the NHS all over the place. So I think in some ways it's good that Wes Streeting is in because he will have the political room to do the things that the Tories sometimes were too scared to do, like getting the private sector more involved. They've already said on the junior doctors that they're not going to give them the 35% pay rise. And as well as the better relationships with the unions, I wonder if it's also a matter for the protesters and the unions, strikers, to realise that they're not going to get anything better now. You know, this is the new government, and this is going to be the new government for the next 5 years at least. So either you take whatever's on the table, or you can keep striking and keep making your working conditions worse and worse and the waiting lists worse and worse. So I think there might be a breakthrough with the junior doctors, but I think it will be really painful and tricky for them because what they're asking for, 35%, is just too high.
Kevin, is this the beginning of a huge string of unions knocking at the door, wanting their payback? I mean, the unions have propped up the Labour Party for all these years in opposition. They're going to want a sack of money, aren't they? Transport, nursing, across the board, teachers, they're all going to want a little nibble. And there's no money left. The biscuit tin is empty with £2.7 trillion in national debt.
Well, that is always the challenge for a Labour government. As I say, in theory, relations should be much better between a Labour government and the trade union movement. But at the same time, the government has to govern for the whole country, not just for the trade unions, and they have to deliver really tough messages to the unions.
And
we always see this with Labour governments.
Beholden to the trades unions as they used to be.
Not as much, but they still get a lot of money from them. You're right, there's a lot more sort of big money private donors now, the Labour Party, maybe than they had under Jeremy Corbyn. But they do still rely heavily on the unions as the bedrock of their funding, really. So, yeah, you're right, the unions will be wanting something in return. But, as you say, economically, things are tough, and Rachel Reeves, I think, is going to be a pretty iron chancellor, and she's not going to be.
Sounds tough.
She's not going to loosen the purse strings willy-nilly. So, I think that's one to keep an eye on.
Well, before we run out of time, why don't we just move on to the battle for the Tory crown? Kevin, you've been looking in the Daily Mail, but, I mean, most of the papers are talking about this as well. Who are the front runners? Who are the most likely? Why would you want the job? And how long would Sunak stay in? Just to sort of take care of things.
Yeah, so he, as we said yesterday, he's going to stand down. He'll remain in place until the mechanism is in place for the new leader to be elected. So he's not going to stay in place until the new leader is elected. Kemi Barnett undoubtedly is the favourite. I think she definitely wants the job. A very tough job, now, undoubtedly. But, you know, Grant Shapps and Penny Mordaunt, who certainly Penny, maybe Grant would have chucked their hat into the ring. They're both gone, so that narrows it down a bit. But it's going to be fascinating. Priti Patel, I think, will definitely go for it as well. Tom Tugendhat is mentioned here as well. He would be maybe the standard bearer for the One Nation.
How are they going to do this leadership contest? How long is it going to be?
Well,
do you remember the last one? It just went on and on and on.
They need to get it done, well, by conference, which isn't long. So that puts a hard stop on. That's the end of September. So
well, that wrecks everybody's holidays.
The members won't get a say. They've already said that. So it'll be an internal thing. And I wonder if the internal Tory party are completely out of sync with the voters now.
Yeah, well, I think they will get a final say. I think we'll go back to the version where Liz Truss won. You know, the party will all sit down to the final two, and then the members will vote on the two selected.
It took forever when they did that.
I think it will probably take a while this time as well. What I've heard is that they're going to use Tory conference as a kind of a dry run, an audition, exactly, a rehearsal for these candidates, see how they handle.
That means Rishi Sunak's going to stay as Prime Minister.
Leader of the...
Sorry, yeah.
He wishes.
Leader for a couple of months. Look, we've got no more time to talk about it right now. We will next time you come back. Right now, Annie Shuttleworth's got your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A cool and showery weekend to come. There could be some water on the roads. We do have a rain warning in for parts of Scotland this morning, particularly northeastern Scotland. But there's also some heavy outbreaks of rain across eastern areas of England, parts of North Wales too. And many of us are likely to see a shower through today. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around as well. In any sunshine, though, it's not going to feel too bad, particularly across the south coast, where we're a bit more sheltered from the breeze at time. So here we could see 19, possibly 20 degrees, but for most of us will be in the mid, possibly lower teens, with some fairly persistent rain lingering, particularly across northern areas into this evening. So further heavy rain to come throughout this evening, particularly across northeastern areas of Scotland. I think the heaviest rain there will still be through this morning. It will get a little bit lighter through the day, but there could still be some localised flooding issues. Showers across Northern Ireland, much of southern Scotland into northern areas of England as well. Later on this evening, fewer in the way of showers as we head further south, particularly towards the south coast. There will be a bit of a breeze through the English Channel as well throughout this evening too. Now, overnight tonight, that low pressure that's bringing that wet weather will slowly push away to the north and east, and behind it we will see clearer skies developing as we head into Sunday quite widely across the UK. We start to pick up more of a westerly breeze, so across western areas with more cloud around here and some showers too, a milder night. But in the clearer skies, we could be down into the mid-single figures. But that does mean there's a bit more sunshine around across eastern and some northern areas to start the day on Sunday. But across the south and west, heavy showers will push in through the day. Now, these could turn quite heavy. They could last a little while as well. The winds aren't quite as strong on Sunday, so that means the showers won't move through quite as quickly. So a further risk of some water on the roads. And again, temperatures a little below where they should be for this time in July. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. The work starts here for the new Prime Minister.
Yes, Sir Keir Starmer takes the keys to number 10 in a landslide victory.
As the new leader appoints his government with the NHS, immigration and housing top of the agenda.
And this all comes as Sir Keir Starmer and his new cabinet prepare to meet for the first time later this morning around 10 a.m.
But are you feeling blue? Well, Rishi Sunak licks his wounds now in the worst ever result for the Conservative Party, but displays graciousness in defeat.
I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss.
So who will replace Rishi Sunak as the new Tory leader as civil war brews behind the scenes?
Meanwhile, what's Boris saying about all this? Well, he's saying don't reform. He warns the Tories to avoid merging with Reform UK, and he offers his advice on how to run the party.
Divine intervention? Well, Joe Biden claims only the Lord Almighty would make him drop out of the presidential race as he describes himself as a black woman.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
And the parents of the missing teen, Jay Slater, are given official permission to hire a private team in Tenerife to search for their son. And they hit out at those internet trolls who've accused them of mismanaging their GoFundMe page.
And should we let criminals serve prison sentences at home in a bid to tackle overcrowding in our jails? We'll be debating that later in the show.
It's a huge weekend at Wimbledon with Emma Raducanu, Andy Murray, Harry at darts and Cam Norrie all flying the flag still for Britain. We look forward to the Grand Prix at Silverstone and is watching England's quest for glory at Euro 2024 damaging our health. We'll find out later this hour.
Yes.
Hello, good morning. A little bit of a disappointing weekend to come, particularly for July. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
Top of the morning, it's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast. What's all this about? Watching sport or watching the football is bad for us?
It's
emotionally.
It's almost a near-death experience.
Well, yeah.
It is at the moment. Because
I mean, I don't know a lot about football, but watching it was the same for me. I was yelling at the television.
But it can be the same with any sport. You know, you can watching Wimbledon, you want somebody to win, and you know, with the ebbs and flows of the match.
Yeah, but I was yelling at the television saying, "Do something with the ball! Don't just look at
That's
it."
enough. But that's enough to raise your stress level. That's the thing.
Yes.
I mean, I'm going to go into it in much more detail later on. I'm not going to quote numbers necessarily because I won't need middle.
On my family WhatsApp, one of our group, who is really keen on football, she says, I can't bear any more, I'm going for a walk.
Well, my family WhatsApp group causes me stress levels anyway, even when there's not football.
Well, that's
on.
true.
So that's it. No, we'll be looking at it later on. There was a football manager, Sam Allardyce, who guests on the show now and again. He was wired up to heart monitors I think it was about 2001 when he was managing Bolton. And afterwards, when they did the analysis, they said, "We can't believe you're alive."
Yeah.
You know, and he always said to me that that if there was one bit of his job that he could trade off and just hand back, it would be the match day.
That was News of the World. I was working in the News of the World at that time.
Yes.
And I remember his heart was going like a hummingbird's.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I know. Will he take? He was on.
Yeah, but he's not an average fan, is he? I mean,
no,
it's his
not.
job.
It is his job, yeah. But it's still. Yes, that's a good point. But it's still. Fans get so involved in it as well.
Yeah.
You know, you ask any. That's where the pressure comes from. That's where the pressure comes from to do well, because the fans have spent money, they've spent emotion, they've given up their time to follow this, and it's no different for any sport, really. We all have our favourites, and we all want to back them, and we're desperate for them to win.
Do you think it's the same for politicians during the general election? I think it must be incredibly stressful to every 4 or 5 years to actually have to reapply for your job and beg people to vote for you, and then to have to suffer the ignominy of waiting for the vote numbers to come in, and then having to consider. I mean, Liz Truss's face when she stood up on that podium, when they eventually found her. I mean, I don't know whether you were watching, but they couldn't find her at first.
No. Yeah, I think she was hiding in the toilet.
Well, that's what I wondered, if she was really, truly too upset.
They didn't put lettuce up instead?
Well, that would have been tempting, wouldn't it? In the end, when she came out, you can't read her face because she has this face, doesn't she, that doesn't give anything away.
You need it.
But you just wonder, her stress levels must have been pretty high.
Yeah, well, she probably what football fans do, and just get a few pints down your neck, just to try and keep the heart rate down. That's my coping mechanism, isn't it? Doctor's orders.
Yeah, exactly.
I really don't think that is doctor's orders, is it? Anyway, how did you feel this morning when you woke up? Did you look out the window at the thunder and lightning and all the rain and think, oh, this is a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new government and a new Prime Minister? So Keir Starmer, apparently he's going to host his first new cabinet meeting today at 10 o'clock, when he will begin to put in place his agenda for the next 5 years.
But first, let's take a moment to remind ourselves of what he promised yesterday in his first speech outside 10 Downing Street.
If you voted Labour yesterday, we will carry the responsibility of your trust as we rebuild our country. But whether you voted Labour or not, in fact, especially if you did not, I say to you directly, my government will serve you. Politics can be a force for good. We will show that. We've changed the Labour Party, returned it to service, and that is how we will govern.
And, of course, all of these events could only come about after the Conservatives were utterly trounced in the polls, with record losses of 251 seats. Here's Rishi Sunak outside Downing Street.
Following this result, I will step down as party leader, not immediately, but once the formal arrangements for selecting my successor are in place. It is important that after 14 years in government, the Conservative Party rebuilds, but also that it takes up its crucial role in opposition professionally and effectively.
So now the big question is, who will replace Rishi Sunak? Well, the previous Bookie's favourites, Penny Mordaunt's lost her seat, as did former Prime Minister Liz Truss. So let us know in the comments, who do you think should be the next Prime Minister? Go to gbnews.com/your say.
So joining us in the studio, though, is political commentator Peter Spence. Oh, lovely to see you in the studio.
Bless you.
It's ages
Pleasure
since
to
we've
be
seen you
here.
in the flesh, as it were. Have you been in the new set before?
No, I have not.
It's very posh, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm overwhelmed, to be honest.
OK, well, talking of new, everything new, round that cabinet table is going to be the new cabinet at 10 o'clock. Gosh, I wonder how you even start that cabinet meeting.
Very, very good question. Well, I'm sure he'll say some nice things, and then
he'll congratulate everybody.
Yeah, and they'll listen attentively, and then they'll nod their heads and scratch their heads, probably because of the fact that however hard you try to prepare yourself, when you're in opposition, by contrast, you're sort of crawling, and then when you're in government, all of a sudden you're sprinting, and you sort of think you're sprinting when you're in opposition, but hell, you've got a bit of a surprise coming.
In America, they get 3 months to live, to come up to the time when they actually have to sit down and get down to business. So that's 3 months of meetings and schedulings and figuring out what they're going to do, and then the inaugural and everything. Here, the removal men have already been in, moving out and then moving Keir in, and he's got to sit down and start business straight away. And he's more or less already said what his priorities are, and health is going to be one of the first.
Yes, it certainly is, and they're very clearly very focused on that. But at the same time, it's going to cost an awful lot of money that they don't have, which is why I think we'll probably see quite a lot quite soon about planning reform, which is a lovely thing for people who want to buy a home but can't afford them because there aren't enough around, the supply and demand and so on. And of course, planning reform doesn't actually cost so very much. It's deeply controversial, but then the deal is that you're at your most powerful when you've just got in, and you can do stuff which...
And you could also see those houses being built.
Oh, absolutely right.
It's a very physical thing they could point at if they can build some houses fast.
Yeah, and quite a lot of those younger voters who lent the Labour Party, and let's face it, it was lent rather than given, lent them their vote thinking, oh, well, maybe it was quite a good move after all.
Peter, let's look at some of the personnel who'd be in that cabinet. Just decided yesterday, a few names leap out. David Lammy as Foreign Secretary, previously called Donald Trump a racist and a KKK and Nazi sympathiser. That could be an awkward first meeting if Donald Trump gets in as president, which is looking more and more likely. Ed Miliband, Energy Secretary, a net zero obsessive. People are really worried about what that might mean for their energy bills. West Streeting in health barely survived. He only scraped through by 500 votes. Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, previously held up a refugees welcome sign. It's her job to control our borders. Are these people up to these massive jobs?
Well, the real point is that they are massive, whoever's trying to do them, and particularly for the new Foreign Secretary, because of the fact that we very clearly... Keir Starmer is on a mission to reset our relationship with the European Union, and of course he's got a European sort of summit that he'll be chairing in a couple of weeks, which will be quite helpful. But what he's up against is Keir Starmer is a progressive, and you've suddenly got a lurch to the right in both France and Germany and various other places. And as you rightly say, in the United States, we're looking at a lurch to the extreme right from Donald Trump. So he has got some very, very tricky negotiations to undergo. When it comes to his first meeting with Donald Trump, well, God knows how that'll go.
Awkwardly, I would think.
Yeah.
OK, we'll move on. We'll see you again a bit later on in the programme. But what could it all mean for these big ideas, because they're going to cost money? And will that then immediately impact on us, taxpayers? How will Labour fix the economy? Let's ask business and finance broadcaster Michael Wilson. Hi there, Michael. Big ideas. Where's the money going to come for any of it?
Inevitably higher taxes, but not straight away. You'll hear the normal sounds of the new Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, going into number 11 and saying, you know, the cupboard is bare. Well, we sort of know that. Actually, what's happened is, because we've all been caught up in the excitement of the election, it's only boring people like me that see that inflation is actually falling. That probably means... It could mean that interest rates could come down towards the end of the year. Now, that might make mortgages cheaper, and it also might promote some sort of feel-good factor as far as the general population is concerned. So therefore, the cost of living crisis will appear slightly smaller. It's still there, but it will appear slightly smaller than it has done over the past couple of years. So, in a sense, what Labour is inheriting is a only relatively, very anemic growth and all the rest of it, but it looks as though interest rates could come down. And I think that's probably a good thing. Not for savers. I mean, savers really, if I were advising people, and that's not really my job, but for what it's worth, what you should be doing is looking around, see who's got the best saving rates at the moment, and then lock that in, because I think that interest rates probably are on are on the way down. So, in a sense, what Rachel Reeves is walking into is quite a decent, over the past couple of years, it's quite a decent economic thing. And the one thing about Rachel Reeves is that this was apparently her ambition, to be Chancellor of the Exchequer, not to be Prime Minister. So you're not going to see the fun and games that we saw between, for example, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown in those years when he was Prime Minister and Gordon Brown was Chancellor. There was always an intense rivalry between 11 and 10 Downing Street. I don't think you're going to see that now.
Michael, the fact of the matter is, you paint a very rosy picture. The reality is quite different. With £2.7 trillion in national debt, old Mother Hubbard will go to the cupboard and find the cupboard exceedingly bare. And then the Labour Party have this nebulous concept of we'll rebuild through growth. I've asked endless ministers, what does that mean? How do you grow your way out of an economy with a black hole with no money?
Growth is one thing, as you quite rightly say. Rachel Reeves has set this target of 2% a year. It's about 1.8 at the moment, which is relatively anemic. As I said, it doesn't compare too badly with the rest of the G7. It's not a rosy picture. There are really, really very, very hard questions to ask. I mean, there are 5.6 million people in the country who claim benefits, and that figure has increased 800,000 since 2022. I mean, that's the sort of picture that she's got to come to terms with. And unfortunately, how do you actually promote growth? And more importantly, never mind growth, what about productivity? You were talking about the National Health Service. It's all right chucking money at it, but how do you get value for money out of the National Health Service? I suggest that's a really difficult thing for politicians of any stripe, any colour to do, and particularly Labour. But that's what they've got to do. Now, it may just be, again, I don't want to paint too rosy a picture, but here's the interesting thing. As the rest of the world, including the United States, including Europe, including France, moves into confusion, who is going to be the next president of the United States and so on, it could just be that the international markets, thus the debt and the amount of money that they will lend the UK, may look at the UK and say, do you know what? In all this confusion, here is a relatively quiet and stable island that we can invest in. That's where the growth is going to come from. It's going to come from foreign investment. And unless you can attract that,
that's more
then
debt.
You might as well give up.
But that's more debt, which means more tax. Nothing's for free, Michael. We're 2.7 trillion in debt already. We can't keep borrowing our way out of problems. Sure, look, we have to move on. We're simply out of time.
But you were making a speech.
Well, thanks for trying to be positive, but I think the reality is, we're broke, and the rhetoric stops today and the work begins.
Well, that's their problem. They wanted it. Michael, we'll have to leave it there for the moment. Thank you so much. And actually, talking of who's going to be the next President of the United States brings us on to President Joe Biden, because he said that only the Lord Almighty could make him quit the presidential race. Obviously, this is because he's facing mounting pressure to step down.
We're not going to do that. You sure? Well, yeah, I'm sure. Look, I mean, if the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I'll get out of the race. The Lord Almighty's not coming down.
Now, that's not enough for you, then. This all comes as the US president claims to be a black woman in his latest gaffe on the campaign trail.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
It's one of those moments, wasn't it? Earlier, we spoke to the former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations, Steve Gill.
Not one bit. And this is beyond gaffe. There is a serious incapacity that Joe Biden is enjoying. We saw it, and unfortunately the world saw it in the debate last Thursday. Both our friends across the world and our enemies like Kim Jong-un and Putin and President Xi, everybody saw this. And I think it puts not only America in danger, but the world in danger to know this guy who's the leader of the free world is incapable of behaving and acting. And I think there's been too much in the U.S. focused on the politics of it, whether he should be the nominee for the Democrats again. He shouldn't keep being president with the level of incapacity he has shown, and he's not shown any improvement over the last 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, but just as Martin said there, he used that word that, gaffe prone. And maybe we can all understand that overall, he doesn't make gaffes. It's just the occasional one. And we live now in a social media world where you make one little gaffe and it'll be replayed and go viral, as they call it. I mean, maybe we should just shrug our shoulders and say he knows what he's doing. He's got an administration that knows what they're doing. Let's not get hung up on a few gaffes.
Well, I don't think we have an administration that knows what they're doing. When you look at energy policy that has gas prices twice what they were, food prices, bread, eggs, milk, twice what they were when he took office. I mean, you look at the border, millions are flowing across the border illegally, and in foreign policy, it's not working. So I keep telling people the personality is the least of the problems with Joe Biden. It's the policies. And you don't fix that with Kamala Harris or any of the other Democrats. They will pursue the same failing policies. So you don't fix that. I will say some of the gaffes are over pushed. He was talking about the fact that there's no traffic congestion when he drives around now. When he was a senator, he had traffic. Now, that was not a gaffe. He was making a joke. Maybe it was a joke most people didn't understand. But he's talking about that as president, you just kind of breeze through everywhere you're going.
OK, Steve, just to sort of try and figure out if this was a gaffe or something altogether more surreal, let's listen to that clip again.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
Now, Steve, I know we live in an era where we can all be whatever we want to be. We can all live whatever life we want. We can all transition. He might think he's a black woman.
No, he doesn't. That's not fair.
But the fact of the matter is, we know he was actually talking about Kamala Harris. But he just lost his way, and it's nakedly abundant. He can't string a sentence together. And if you can't string a sentence together...
No, but see, is that fair? Because he obviously can.
The evidence is there.
But yeah, but he doesn't talk like that all the time. I just wonder if we're not getting a bit too... reactionary.
But I think the fact of the matter is, Steve, if he's making those sort of gaffes when he's not really under a lot of pressure, it was a pretty friendly interview last night. There wasn't a brutal cross-examination. There wasn't an audience. There wasn't Donald Trump in the studio. Can this guy be trusted with the big things like the nuclear codes?
Well, except Stephanopoulos pushed him several times. Are you willing to do a neurological exam? And he dodged and pushed back every time. But look, if I've been drinking and I'm in my car and the cops ask me to do a breathalyzer and I know I'm going to fail it, I'm refusing the test. Joe Biden knows he will fail a neurological test, so he's doing the right thing and refusing it. I do think the black woman thing was more getting tongue twisted rather than that he doesn't know what he's talking about. But he shows the other instances during the debate when he's just totally lost, he trails off. He gives every bit of evidence of somebody who's in mid stages to late stages of dementia, and that's what's scary.
Yeah, it's very scary. It's very worrying on all sorts of levels, isn't it, really? OK, it's 20 minutes past 7. Shall we catch up with the weather? It was dreadful last night. Let's hope today's going to be better.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A cool and showery weekend to come. There could be some water on the roads. We do have a rain warning in force for parts of Scotland this morning, particularly northeastern Scotland. But there's also some heavy outbreaks of rain across eastern areas of England, parts of North Wales too. And many of us are likely to see a shower through today. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around as well. In any sunshine, though, it's not going to feel too bad, particularly across the south coast, where we're a bit more sheltered from the breeze at time. So here we could see 19, possibly 20 degrees, but for most of us will be in the mid, possibly lower teens, with some fairly persistent rain lingering, particularly across northern areas into this evening. So further heavy rain to come throughout this evening, particularly across northeastern areas of Scotland. I think the heaviest rain there will still be through this morning. It will get a little bit lighter through the day, but there could still be some localised flooding issues. Showers across Northern Ireland, much of southern Scotland into northern areas of England as well later on this evening. Fewer in the way of showers as we head further south, particularly towards the south coast. There will be a bit of a breeze through the English Channel as well throughout this evening too. Now overnight tonight, that low pressure that's bringing that wet weather will slowly push away to the north and east, and behind it we will see clearer skies developing as we head into Sunday quite widely across the UK. We start to pick up more of a westerly breeze, so across western areas with more cloud around here and some showers too, and milder night, but in the clearer skies we could be down into the mid-single figures. But that does mean there's a bit more sunshine around across eastern and some northern areas to start the day on Sunday. But across the south and west, heavy showers will push in through the day. Now, these could turn quite heavy. They could last a little while as well. The winds aren't quite as strong on Sunday, so that means the showers won't move through quite as quickly. So a further risk of some water on the roads, and again, temperatures a little below where they should be for this time in July. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Oh, well, it's time for the British giveaway. Yeah. You know what I mean, the British giveaway. And it's a big one as well. My goodness, that would change your concept. It could be raining outside, but make you feel good to win a whopping 30 grand in tax-free cash. It's our biggest prize to date. Here's how you could win it.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
How deep is the rift between Prince William and Prince Harry? Well, it's been reported that Prince William is refusing to speak to Prince Harry and has even taken on the role of disciplinarian, which was once, of course, the job of Prince Philip. But has that job gone now to William? And does he indeed rule with a rod of iron? Well, joining me now to discuss this is the former BBC royal correspondent Michael Cole. Himself has a lot of iron. Do you think this is a fair approximation of the character? After all, Michael Cole, surely the palace could do with a firm leader at the moment. Is Wills the man?
I think he is, Martin, and good afternoon to you. William, 42 last Friday. He's grown into the role of heir apparent. He looks good, he sounds good. Now, when the late Queen was alive, she was the chairman of the board, but the chief executive was definitely Prince Philip. She was the head of state, but he was the head of the family. He chaired the Way Ahead Committee. He liaised with the security services. And he laid down the law for a long, long time. Of course, Duchess of York, Sarah, Fergie, was banished. And he also used to go through the invitation lists for any royal event, striking off people he didn't want there. So he was very much in charge. And I think the situation with William is that when he makes up his mind is made up. And he's doing extraordinarily well. And he's doing it without the daily support in public of his wife, of course. And we all wish Kate, the Princess of Wales, well and a speedy continued recovery. And I think the King will be welcoming his older son taking this more prominent role because, quite frankly, he can't do everything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have said Storm. You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Martin and Anne. It's 27 minutes past 7.
Now, here's an interesting one, upon which you will probably have a view. According to a think tank, the government may have to put convicted offenders under house arrest rather than jailing them, rather than putting them in jail, actually sort of keep them at home and put them under house arrest because our prisons are overcrowded.
So there's more we're asking the big question, should we let criminals serve their sentences at home?
Well, joining us now is social campaigner and friend of the programme, Winston Davis.
Morning.
Hi there.
Hi
I can imagine in some cases it might be realistic, and I suppose we've got to do something about the overcrowding problem.
1,000,000%. And the reality of it is this. We have known about this situation for the last 4 years. When Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor, 2020, he was told that in 2022, 2023, we're going to run out of prison spaces. 2024, and we've run out of prison spaces, or we're about to run out of prison spaces. Drastic action's got to be taken in the immediacy. If they need to tag offenders to take away the pressure from the prison service, like as in today or next week or next month, whenever we get to that point, if it's an option we have to take now, fine. But these are literally just plasters. You know, the other options are reducing the automatic release time from 50% to 45% or 40%. But again, they're just plasters over symptomatic problems we've got within the prison service and probation service, which has come from 30 years of government policy and legislation, which has had privatisation of prisons, which has exploded the prison population, cuts to the prison probation service in 2010, 2015 after austerity, and then the part privatisation of the probation service. All of that has been a perfect storm to get us to the point where we're desperate for more spaces. So then was the policy to come of the government? Let's build more private prisons. Who benefits out of that? The shareholders of the private prisons. Who pays for that? Taxpayers.
OK, so at the moment, the jail capacity is about 88,800 and the population is 87,347. So we're at peak points.
Yeah.
Basically, the nicks are going to be filled soon. But a lot of people watching this will be saying, well, why should we go soft on crime? Who's going to monitor this? What, is this going to be cons going home? What, are they going to be ankle tagged? Or is there going to be somebody who checks on them? They go and sign. Probation's already under stretch. You can't find a copper on your local street for love nor money.
100%.
How's it going to work?
Well, the reality of it is, if we run out of spaces, what other options are there? You know, they talk about you could go onto barges, or you could use barracks or prison of army places. None of them are great options. Someone's got to make some tough decisions now. We've got a new government in here.
Well, Yvette Cooper is now Home Secretary.
She's been banging on about, you know, being tough on crime as well. Yeah. But what are you actually going to do? I think it's a great move they've done bringing in Timpson as the as a Minister of Prisons.
Why do you think that?
Because his father started the Timpson Shoe company, and
Timpson.
and they employed both serving and former prisoners. A lot of their workforce are serving or former prisoners, and they actually, as an organisation, promote rehabilitation. Some of their senior people.
Keys.
They make keys. That's what I'm saying. They're prisoners. They make keys for your homes, our homes, and it works.
OK, I mean, you're all right. The Timpson story is a very inspiring story. They're very, very open about the fact that they rehabilitate former inmates, and they are openly ambitious about that. That's great. That's one solution. But that's when people have served their time. This is a separate issue. This issue is the jails are full, so turf people out on the streets. People are understandably going to listen to this, Winston, and think, well, I already don't feel particularly safe. Only 10% of burglaries get solved. At the moment, we've got drugs out of control, knife crimes out of control. How can this help people feel safer?
The only thing we can say again, because it's an immediate decision they've got to make, you have to look at the least serious offenders, the least likely to be violent offenders.
Right, let me ask you then. There was a report out last week about women. There are too many women in prison. And when you put a woman in prison, you deprive often children of a mother, don't you? They may already not have anyone else in place. You're therefore creating a problem. Are there too many women in prison? I mean, and are there some... I mean, clearly there are some crimes for which they should be in prison.
Sure, 100%, yeah.
But maybe there are some crimes which actually could be helped by keeping them at home, looking after their children, tagged in some way.
Again, this is stuff that needs to be looked at right now. What is the lowest level of offenders? Lowest level of offenders. Some of the... You know, I know people going about shoplifting, it needs to be punished and whatever. 100% I'm with it. But right now, as it stands at the moment, let's look at the lowest level of criminals and convicted criminals that are making crimes, and look at how we can keep them out of the system. The other thing is this. I was looking at the thing. We've got 12% of our prison population, in 10,000 people in prison, actually are foreign criminals. And I'm saying, like, well, let's look at some of those low-level offenders, that are doing shorter sentences. Why don't we, then talking about immigration, why don't we send them back to their countries to serve out their sentences there? That will have an immediate effect on our population, maybe free up to 2,000, 1,000 spaces right there. But long-term, we've got to look at how we view prison and rehabilitation, and do we actually think of prison as a rehabilitative process? Our system is sick. If you're sick in your body, you go to a coach and you look at people that have got a better body than you. So we would look at countries like Norway that are doing better than us, that actually they've got a fall in prison population, they've got lower reoffending rates. That's what we need to be looking at.
And so many of those shoplifters, repeat offenders, is because they're addicted to substances, and so they're stealing to feed their habit. Winston Davies, every time you come in, I think you should be involved in this. Why don't you send your CV to Keir Starmer?
I'm telling you, I'm up for it.
Yeah.
I'm up for it.
But, he's talking common sense. Yeah. This is the sort of thing, if you haven't lived it, you don't understand it. But people will be listening to this, Winston, and thinking, I don't want more cons on the street.
Well, I'm sure Keir Starmer is watching the programme now, so he'll make a note.
Come on, Keir. Get me in.
Absolutely.
Well, is that his first cabinet meeting? Winston, superb to have you.
Cheers, thank you. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Do stay with us, because we're going to talk sport now. Next, Aidan McGee will be here with everything from tennis to Formula One, through football and a couple of other things besides. Do stay.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
As he turns 80 next month, Thomas Markle gives a moving interview to the Mail newspaper, saying, "I've never been one for birthdays, but I know the one person I most want to hear from, Meghan, will not be in touch. I'd love to meet my grandchildren," he said, "but I'd be happy with a photograph at this stage." Well, for reaction to this sad story, I'm delighted to welcome US political and royal commentator Hilary Fordwich.
He also added that he never thought that he'd have something in common with the king. And of course, the king doesn't know his grandchildren either. And I think that's a very sad state of affairs. What is very important, the important thread here, though, is the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy of Meghan Markle claiming to care about people and all the tours they go on where they have empathy for people, and yet her very own father. And also, Mark, it really happened so fast. In 2016, she posted on Instagram that her daddy was the greatest in the world. And the other thing is that she claimed that she had made everything herself and she came from a very poor family. Actually, she had a very privileged childhood, being sent to private schools in California.
Well, poor old Thomas Markle, as he approaches his 80th birthday, is a serious thorn in the side and, frankly, an ongoing embarrassment to the couple.
Yes, and I think that one of the things that's immensely sad is that, Meghan Markle wasn't happy to be number 2 to Princess Catherine, and now she ends up being really nothing. I do think that a tiger doesn't change its stripes. What we have to look at here is track record. Somebody who's dumped her friends, dumped her own family, dumped her country originally when she came over to the UK, and even her adopted dog. There is a track record there, and Thomas Markle has sadly said it's referred to now as being Markled when you're dumped.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Morning. If you've just joined us, it's 7:37. And believe it or not, there have been other things to talk about than politics, even in the last 24 hours. Because if you're keen on sport, there is so much of it about at the moment. Aidan McGee's here. And I was not always watching the politics. I was at home watching a lot of Wimbledon. And it was full of Brits.
It was. Well, we're going to the second week, or Middle Saturday. Middle Saturday is the big day, isn't it? That's where everybody can get out there and hopefully get in for a ticket. It's a bit of a raucous atmosphere on the Saturday, and that's exciting because we've had a bit of a rain interrupted first week, haven't we? But I can't remember too many times, Anne. I don't know about you, when we've had such British interest halfway through.
No, on Thursday we got the centre court was full of Brits.
Yes,
which was wonderful. You'd got number one in the male game. You've got number one playing number two,
which was a little bit of a disappointment in some ways.
Sorry, British number one playing British number two. Yes, yeah. I mean that never really happens.
I know, and it was a surprise as well because Cam Noy didn't have much form going into this. He'd only won, in fact, since March. I don't think he'd won back-to-back matches until just before Wimbledon.
My goodness, he was good.
He was indeed, and I mean, I think he's a late starter. I first saw him play at Eastbourne maybe 5 years ago. I could see some development potential there. I didn't expect him to get to the semi-final at Wimbledon, but he's in there. He's involved now. I mean, he's up against Alexander Zverev, who he's lost his last 5 matches again. That's sort of centre court today at 1:30. Emma Raducanu up against Lulu Radovic.
She played magnificently yesterday.
So she's going into this as a wild card, and this is eerily similar.
Which is because she's had a bad year. Yes. She's not seeded.
Well, bad 3 years. Actually,
well, yeah,
really.
So she comes in. And we know that she's got performance inside her if she can just find it. But she's unseeded, so she comes in on a wild card.
Well, you think about it, when she won the US Open in 2021 at Flushing Meadow, don't forget she did not drop a set. Yeah. 17 years old. She was a qualifier. So she had to really do it the hard way. And there are signs. You mentioned something last hour about winning the day.
Yes.
It's kind of therapy, isn't it?
She said, yes, she's clearly been through a fair bit of therapy, because we know she's sort of suffered from anxiety, I think, amongst other things. And
it's a lot to put on somebody when you win like that.
They said to her, why was your performance today so different from how it's been in the last couple of years? And she said, well, you've got to win the day. And that means even if things don't go your way, if you can get to the end of the day and feel that you've won your day. And I thought, that's a very healthy attitude, actually.
I don't think she was bargaining for how much her life would change after achieving what she did 3 years ago.
Overnight,
yeah. Exactly. When you're just thrust into that environment of everyone knowing who you are. And I followed her career because she grew up near me. Ah. And so she went to the same school as my nieces and nephews. So, you know, I'm surprised that she didn't achieve more in the last 3 years, but she is young enough to do it, and she's showing her calibre. And I wouldn't want to face her if I was in the last 16 now.
I mean, she was up against a number 9 seed.
Number 9 seed,
who's clearly very, very good.
She beat Maria Sakkari in the semi-final of the US Open as well in 2021.
Well, she beat her in straight sets yesterday.
She did indeed. Well, don't forget, she didn't even drop a set 3 years ago. So there are comparisons. I should say as well, I was in Southfields on, I think it was Wednesday night or Thursday night at a restaurant. I'm not going to give them any more publicity than they're due, but they said that Carlos Alcaraz went in there last year, and he said that he's gone back this year. He was in there last week because he wants to keep up that superstition of going to the same restaurant.
And that was interesting, because when they interviewed Carlos Alcaraz about his...
That's better. Ben Leo called him Carlos Alcatraz.
Yeah, Alcatraz. I know, it's a very easy mistake to make. He said... no, it wasn't Subaku, it was Anna...
I don't watch tennis.
Oh, in a minute. No, I know. Former number 1 Brit. Who does a lot of the... interviewing now.
Annabelle Croft.
Yes, thank you very much. Annabelle Croft, yeah. She said to him, how are you getting on, or something, and I understand you wanted to get off early because you've got a football game to watch. And he turned to the crowd and he said, oh, my goodness, yes, what's the score?
Yeah.
And they said at the moment it's still love all, I was going to say, 0-0. And so he was keen to go and watch Spain play.
Well, that's actually the same with F1 today and Lewis Hamilton. He's getting qualifying out, wrapped up today for the Grand Prix at Silverstone so that he can go and watch the England game at 5 o'clock. It's a little bit of a pain, these 5 o'clock kickoffs, aren't they? Because in the week, Monday to Friday, it's a little bit of a rush getting back from work if you're doing the 9 to 5. Whereas
on
if the 8
Saturday, it's
o'clock...
great.
Yeah, on Saturday, it's fine, yeah, exactly.
But all the sport's happening at once. It's weird, isn't it? We haven't got any more time right now.
No.
No, yeah, but there's more.
Are you back
more
next
to come.
time?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, there's more to come.
Let's have some new balls next time. Talk about football.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, change ends. Yeah. You're watching GB News Breakfast with Martin and Anne. Do stay around. We'll look at the papers next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In World War I, 309 men from Britain and the Commonwealth never came home because they'd been shot at dawn. The majority were killed for desertion, cowardice and sleeping at post. Appearing at their court-martials and told they'd brought shame on their country, these men had no opportunity to defend themselves and were executed by a firing squad. The National Memorial Arboretum launched a fundraising campaign to restore the memorial, which has stood for more than 20 years.
Thank you to your viewers for their support for the fundraising campaign, and thanks to the generosity of so many people, we've been able to replace all 309 of the posts that represent those young men that were shot in the First World War. Restoration of this really precious memorial.
The centrepiece of the memorial is the young soldier, blindfolded and facing his execution. In September 1916, Private Harry Farr was ordered to the front. Already suffering from shell shock, he was overwhelmed and refused his orders. He was court-martialed, and in a trial lasting only 20 minutes, he was sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he faced the firing squad without a blindfold. Janet Booth is Private Farr's granddaughter and was part of the public campaign to have those who were shot at dawn officially pardoned.
When I asked my gran, do you know where I could find Harry's grave? And she looked at my mother, and there was this sort of look between them, and then she said, well, he hasn't got a grave because they didn't warrant, he deserved one because he was shot as a coward and had let his country down. We can come here as a family and pay our respects to him, and also for all the other families, it's somewhere to come and remember their loved ones.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have said stump. You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello again, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast here on GB News with Martin and Anne.
Yeah, time to go through the papers now, and let's get stuck straight in with Kevin Schofield and Cindy. Right, let's crack on. Shall we get into the cabinet? Starmer's chosen ones. Who are on the list, and what shall we say about them? There are some names there that raised eyebrows.
Yeah, there's no one that surprising because he has had a relatively stable front bench since that botched reshuffle he tried a couple of years ago, where he kind of tried a few people out and then
tried to sack Angela Rayner.
He tried to sack Angela Rayner. She said no, he kept her on. But that was also when he replaced Rachel Reeves, Annalise Dodds with Rachel Reeves, and she is now the Chancellor. So Angela Rayner, Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, Levelling Up Secretary, Rachel Reeves as Chancellor, David Lammy as Foreign, Wes Streeting as Health. Jonathan Ashworth might have been given a role, but obviously lost his seat really unexpectedly.
That was a real shock, wasn't it?
Less unexpectedly was Thangam Debonair, who lost her seat, and so they had to fill in someone for that as well. So yeah, it's a stable cabinet. It's people who you recognise from the Labour Party from before, and they're going to have a lot on their in trays. And interestingly, the thing that the Labour Party have said that they'll do is a mission-guided government rather than department-guided government. They have these 5 missions across policy areas that they want the different departments to work together on. So, even though Ed Miliband is the Energy Secretary, energy is a mission across departments, so the other department heads are expected to work with him.
Does that sound viable?
It
sounds a bit newspeak, doesn't it?
Yeah, and different. A lot of chiefs, maybe, and who ultimately takes responsibility for that particular mission if there's several cabinet ministers involved.
Charge,
You know what I mean? So
I think the civil servants are also a bit confused about what they're meant to do in each of the departments in relation to these.
It's one of those things that might have sort of sounded OK in opposition, but then once you actually get into Whitehall and the machine gets hold of you,
you've just got to get going.
And as soon as he says, the civil service will be like, hang on a minute, who are you actually reporting to here? Who ultimately hold the pen? So, so we'll have to wait and see. I mean, they've said that they don't want, ideally, to have many reshuffles. He wants people to be in jobs for several years, which, on the face of it, makes a lot of sense. If you want somebody to... you're much better, surely, if you've got experience, you've been in the job for a long time, rather than, the Tories went through umpteen housing ministers, and we've been through lots of chancellors.
Education ministers.
Education ministers. You need consistency, but often politics gets in the way, so we'll just have to wait and see how
That's part of the problem of being in opposition for so long, is that you don't have anybody here who's actually done these jobs in any official capacity before, and in particular David Lammy. We have to talk about David Lammy. It's a name that's leapt out. Foreign Secretary. Here's a guy that called Donald Trump a racist, KKK and Nazi sympathiser. In fact, he said he would chain himself to the door of number 10 Downing Street when Donald Trump was going to come to London when he was still the president. Direction of travel over the Atlantic could be that Donald Trump gets re-elected again. It's looking more and more likely. Can this guy sit in the same room as Donald Trump without there being a huge frost in the air?
I think there might be a huge frost, but, there has been a massive U-turn this year from David Lammy and his advisors. They have been sounding much more serious about foreign policy. He's had a few articles published on his thoughts on foreign policy, and he, earlier this year, took his advisors to the States to meet the Trump camp as well, and apparently those meetings went relatively well. And if you think back to how, Conservatives have also really criticised Donald Trump. Did David Cameron going to Mar-a-Lago earlier this year after having said that actually Trump's views on Ukraine was not quite right?
It's not the same as calling him a KKK sympathiser.
No, but that was a number of years ago now, and I think they are ready to be grown-ups now. And you see that from this year. They would not have gone out and met the Trump camp if he still thought that, or he still wanted to think that.
Well, that's
he obviously needs to work with the US, and that's the direction that Keir Starmer wants as well.
That's not the only person that he's had a pop at. Marine Le Pen, who could get in France. He's called her xenophobic, racist. These are the people that David Lammy might be directly dealing with, our nearest partner, France.
Has he said these things in the context of being shadow cabinet, or has he said them on his radio programme when he's mouthing off?
He said it openly on social media as an elected representative of the Labour Party, and now he's been promoted to the Foreign Secretary. I think we should be talking about this.
I mean,
you can't be one of these Twitter student Politico activists and suddenly be put into this big job without facing scrutiny.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to wind his neck in a little bit, and he is prone to running off at the mouth, so I think he has to obviously be very careful now that he's the Foreign Secretary. But, it's not just David Lammy, it's a very inexperienced cabinet. Ed Miliband, I think I'm right in saying, is the only one that's got any ministerial experience. Yvette Cooper, but yeah, you're right. So Yvette and Ed were in the last Labour government, but you're going back a very long time. The rest of them have never had ministerial responsibilities before.
No, but you could say that about any of the Tory cabinet we've had over the past 14 years.
And arguably some of these jobs you can't prepare for. To be Prime Minister, no one is experienced for that job when they first get it. It's just totally different.
Yeah, and it just makes it mean, it's a very difficult time to be taking on.
Can we spin
responsibility,
ahead
it's
before
gonna
we
be
run
fixed
out of time again? Kevin, you've been looking at the Telegraph front page about Nigel Farage, and he's somebody we haven't mentioned for a while yet. He's promised to change politics forever. How's he going to do it with only 5 MPs?
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? And he, unsurprisingly, is talking about trying to get rid of the first-past-the-post system. Now, we hear this again and again, parties who don't get the number of MPs that the number of votes they got it doesn't reflect it properly, and you really see it writ large in this election. Actually, you know, they got 4 million votes and only 5 MPs. The Lib Dems got 3.5 million votes and they're going to get 72 MPs. I mean, it is ridiculous, really. And Labour got 35% in the vote, and I've got a massive majority. The problem is, though, that Labour they've got no interest now in changing the voting system because it's worked completely to their advantage. And then the same goes for the Conservatives when they're in power. They don't want to change it either. So we'll hear a lot of debate about getting rid of first past the post. The Lib Dems now, it's actually worked to their advantage.
Well, they've worked really hard at trying to make it work for them, haven't they?
I think that's the point. That's a great point. What's happening here is that you can say that if we had PR in Britain, then the Reform Party would have 93 MPs. Lib Dems actually doing roundabout right, 79 PR versus 72. The Lib Dems learnt to work with the system.
Well, but it still doesn't. It still doesn't give them enough MPs. No. They have to work so hard on concentrating on specific constituencies,
but that's what they've done, and they've zoned in. They know where they can win. They know where their vote is. They know what policies land, and they've worked with the grain.
Well, and to be fair, that's what Nigel Farage's Reform did.
Right, but on a much smaller scale.
Well, because there's a smaller number of people, and they only had 4 weeks to get their act together.
Correct. But what I'm saying is, no one's ever going to change a system like this. Why would turkeys vote for Christmas? Those in power want to maintain the structure that protects them. This won't happen, so maybe they need to learn to work with the system.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting that Nigel Farage is saying this because he knows all of this. So what is he trying to get across? Actually, I think he's levying on the public disillusionment and the anger at the establishment and the way that things have been done so far, even though he knows that it's not going to ever really change because there's not the numbers for it.
The only thing would be a referendum on it, wouldn't it?
Well, we had one. Well, we had one in 2011. The referendum and it got kicked out.
That's right.
But I think
but the atmosphere's changed.
The challenge for Farage in the next Parliament will be to keep his band of 5 people together and to actually build up a party infrastructure for the next election. Does he actually have the focus and the concentration and the resources to do something like that? Because that takes discipline. And if Farage so far has been a bit of a guerrilla fighter, various really successful campaigns, massive disruptor in British politics, but he's not an organiser, and he needs, if he wants it to be like the Lib Dem operation, he needs to get organised.
Well, on that note, we'll have to conclude for this hour at least. We'll be back in a couple of moments, but first of all, the weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A cool and showery weekend to come. There could be some water on the roads. We do have a rain warning in force for parts of Scotland this morning, particularly northeastern Scotland. But there's also some heavy outbreaks of rain across eastern areas of England, parts of North Wales too. And many of us are likely to see a shower through today. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around as well. In any sunshine, though, it's not going to feel too bad, particularly across the south coast, where we're a bit more sheltered from the breeze at time. So here we could see 19, possibly 20 degrees, but for most of us will be in the mid, possibly lower teens, with some fairly persistent rain lingering, particularly across northern areas into this evening. So further heavy rain to come throughout this evening, particularly across northeastern areas of Scotland. I think the heaviest rain there will still be through this morning. It will get a little bit lighter through the day, but there could still be some localised flooding issues. Showers across Northern Ireland, much of southern Scotland into northern areas of England as well. Later on this evening, fewer in the way of showers as we head further south, particularly towards the south coast. There will be a bit of a breeze through the English Channel as well throughout this evening too. Now overnight tonight, that low pressure that's bringing that wet weather will slowly push away to the north and east, and behind it we will see clearer skies developing as we head into Sunday quite widely across the UK. We start to pick up more of a westerly breeze, so across western areas with more cloud around here and some showers too, and mild milder night, but in the clearer skies we could be down into the mid-single figures. But that does mean there's a bit more sunshine around across eastern and some northern areas to start the day on Sunday. But across the south and west, heavy showers will push in through the day. Now, these could turn quite heavy. They could last a little while as well. The winds aren't quite as strong on Sunday, so that means the showers won't move through quite as quickly. So a further risk of some water on the roads, and again, temperatures a little below where they should be for this time in July. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we've got quite an extraordinary story to talk to you about now, because a triple amputee war hero is launching a bid to become the first to sail across the Pacific Ocean non-stop, solo and unsupported.
Craig Wood was blown up as a teenager by the Taliban in Afghanistan, but now he's hoping to change the perception of disabled people and raise money for other limbless veterans like himself. And Craig joins us now. Morning.
So, Craig, you are extraordinary. You are planning to take up to 80 days to sail from La Paz in Mexico to Japan.
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
It'll be over 6,000.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it will take you how long?
The minimum it's going to take me is 60 days. It could be up to 80. Yeah.
And that's on your own. You've done plenty of this before, haven't you? You've done lots of solo sailing.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of solo sailing, but not as big as this. It is the world's biggest ocean, after all.
And why that particular route?
I wanted it to be a challenge, not just for me, but for anyone.
Right.
So any able-bodied person can look at this and go, wow, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was the main drive. Then it's become a bigger thing than that now. Now I'm raising money for charity, and I can truly inspire people to change their perception on what is possible for disabled people.
And if you don't mind, can we ask you what happened in 2009 in Afghanistan? What were the circumstances of your injury?
I was on a normal routine foot patrol. About 5 metres in front of me, a commando IED was triggered. And subsequently, I became a triple amputee. Both legs above the knee, left hand at the wrist, facial injuries, etc., etc.
The People's Channel.
Good morning. The work starts here for the new Prime Minister.
Yes, Keir Starmer takes the keys to number 10 in a landslide victory.
As the new leader appoints his new government with the NHS, immigration and housing top of the agenda.
And this all comes as Sir Keir Starmer and his new cabinet's prepared to meet for the first time later this morning around 10 a.m.
Meanwhile, who's feeling blue? Rishi Sunak licks his wounds in the worst ever result for the Conservative Party, but displays graciousness in defeat.
I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss.
Ahead, who will replace Rishi Sunak as the new Tory leader as a civil war brews behind the scenes?
Meanwhile, what does Boris Johnson think of all this? Well, he says, do not reform. He's warning the Tories against merging with Reform UK, and he offers his advice on how to fix the party.
And divine intervention? Well, Joe Biden claims only the Lord Almighty would make him drop out of the US presidential race, as he describes himself as a black woman.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
And should we let criminals serve prison sentences at home in a bid to tackle overcrowding in jails? We'll be debating that one too.
And parents of missing teenager Jay Slater are given permission to hire a private team in Tenerife to search for their son as they hit out at trolls who have accused them of mismanaging their GoFundMe page.
It's all eyes on Dusseldorf tonight and England's quest to reach the semi-finals of Euro 2024. Switzerland stand in the way of the Three Lions. We'll be joined later this hour by England's most capped international player.
Hello, good morning. A little bit of a disappointing weekend to come, particularly for July. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
And that man is going to be Peter Shilton, the absolute legend. Look, it's just gone 6 o'clock in the morning.
No, it's not.
It's
just gone 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
You've been at this a long time.
I'm so excited about Peter Shilton. I've just lost 2 hours.
Absolutely. And you're a bit election exhausted, I think, probably, aren't you? On the election for the last 48 hours or so.
I stayed up all night, though.
But I can, I can confirm you are Morton Daubney. He's Morton Daubney.
Morton.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast, by the way. What were you saying, Aidan McGee?
Oh, about the Gareth Southgate sandwich.
Yeah. So I've got the.
I went and bought Martin a sandwich.
Why
is it a Gareth Southgate?
Because it's ham, no mayo. It's the most boring sandwich possible.
Oh, that's unkind.
And so that's the Gareth Southgate.
That's unkind. Don't prejudge it.
That's the gratitude you get for going all the way down to the supermarket.
With the plain crisp and the water. That's the Gareth Southgate snack.
Bit of gruel for after.
Don't be cruel, because it's at 5 o'clock this afternoon and we need to keep up about it, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing, I was just looking at those little clips there outside number 10. I thought it was a lovely touch when Rishi Sunak came out. His wife was carrying the brolly.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's not just for her, is it? Oh, Rachel Reeves there, arriving at number 10 now. That's live.
Yeah, so the first cabinet meeting, 10 a.m.
2 hours before the meeting's going to start. She's obviously first there. Inside number 10.
Now that is a good mindset. 2 hours early to the first cabinet meeting looks good.
Shouldn't they get to look around the house, though? I mean, they're moving in there, aren't they?
No, they do get to
look around and have, just...
Well, that's the point. She lives there now. No, I was just thinking it was lovely that Ushata. How do you Miss Ushata? Sunak walked out with the brolly because I thought, well, that's good because. But I just wondered whether Rishi should have made a crack about it, and what she would have done with the brolly had it started to rain.
Well, they'd have called her the Wally with the brolly. That's the problem.
Yeah, would she have put it up over herself or walked over and said, "I think you need this"? Or something?
I was standing behind that when the Wally with the brolly headline was first used in 2007. I was standing 10 feet behind Steve McLaren at and they reckon he only put it up because he was worried about the rain effect showing him to be more bald than
that's right.
Well, you have to watch out for these things, don't you? Anyway, there you go. It is, of course, the first day for Rachel Reeves et al. A new dawn, a new day, new government. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer will be hosting his first cabinet meeting at 10, as we said, as he begins to put in place his agenda for the next 5 years.
Yeah, well, let's take a moment to remind ourselves of what he promised yesterday in his first speech outside 10 Downing Street.
If you voted Labour yesterday, we will carry the responsibility of your trust as we rebuild our country. But whether you voted Labour or not, in fact, especially if you did not, I say to you directly, my government will serve you. Politics can be a force for good. We will show that. We've changed the Labour Party, returned it to service, and that is how we will govern. Country first, party second.
And of course, all these events could only come about after the Conservatives were trounced in the polls with record losses of 251 seats. Here's Rishi Sunak, also outside Downing Street.
Following this result, I will step down as party leader, not immediately, but once the formal arrangements for selecting my successor are in place. It is important that after 14 years in government, the Conservative Party rebuilds, but also that it takes up its crucial role in opposition professionally and effectively.
The big question for the Tories now is who's going to replace him. Well, the bookies' favourite, Penny Mordaunt, lost her seat, of course, and so did former Prime Minister Liz Truss. So let us know in the comments who you would pick at gbnews.com.
Now, what joins us just from Downing Street is GB News' political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, you did a 21-hour day yesterday. Now you're back for more. We just saw Rachel Reeves arriving at that cabinet meeting. A new dawn, a new day. Tell us more.
But not a very sunny day. It's pouring with rain again here in Downing Street, as it was when I left here at 5 p.m. Yesterday. Yeah, Rachel Reeves just turned up. Obviously, didn't stay overnight in her new flat above number 11 Downing Street. They've been polishing the door knocker this morning, Martin and Anne, in readiness, I think, for the first cabinet at 10 a.m. And then we're expecting a press conference around lunchtime when we'll hear more from Sir Keir Starmer about his plans for government. We're expecting more junior ministers to be appointed today. He had calls already. That's the new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, from Donald Tusk, the Polish Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, and President Macron from France. He also phoned. We're waiting for the phone call with Joe Biden, of course, the US President. That's a very important one to take place, not least because there's a lot on in the PM's in tray. He's off to Washington on Tuesday for a big NATO summit. He'll be there for 3 or 4 days. A really important meeting that. He'll be pressed a lot, I imagine, on his commitment to getting to 2.5% of GDP being spent on defence. Of course, the Labour government, the Labour Party in opposition, wouldn't say it would spend that money, and the Tories said it would do. So it wouldn't, and they wouldn't say when they would get to that figure. So we'll wait and see on that. So a lot to talk about. Overnight reports that they have axed the Rwanda scheme, this idea to fly illegally arrived migrants here to Rwanda for processing. So far, £270 million of our money being spent on that so far. That all goes to the birds. That won't be spent anymore. They will save 2 payments of £50 million each in 2025 and 2026. That's the idea of axing that. But whether Yvette Cooper, the new Home Secretary, whether her idea works to prevent those or to deter those crossings from France, truth will tell.
Yes, actually, we just saw Rachel Reeves arriving there. We'll see more over the next hour or so. And the first thing they do is they always take that cabinet photograph, don't they?
That's right, round the coffin-shaped table, Anne, where one of those tables, rather like the new studio table in GB News, you can see each other if you lean in slightly. So the idea is it's slightly curved, so everyone can see everybody else, is the idea. And what face they choose to use in that photograph will be interesting. Will it be resolute? Will it be smiling? I think some of them seem pretty happy. I was yelling at most of them yesterday afternoon in Downing Street. I think Jonathan Reynolds looked absolutely like the cat that got the cream. Many of these people have never ever walked through the door of 10 Downing Street. They're tired of watching GB News and watching me talk about it, and to finally walk through the front door is a real moment. I think from memory, Pat McFadden, John Healey are the two people who have served in Gordon Brown's government at the back end of the 2000s, I should say. But otherwise, it's all exciting and you know, interesting for them, I think. I noted, of course, we saw there Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, arriving in a government car. So not least being driven around a lot is a start. I remember David Cameron telling me in about 2014 he hadn't driven a car for 9 years at that point. So they're used to driving themselves around. Not anymore. They've got a chauffeur.
Chris Hope, you're showing Rishi Sunak how he should have done it. You've got an umbrella in the rain at Downing Street. Why on earth couldn't he have done a chopper and followed your lead? Always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. Thank you very much for joining us on GB News Breakfast. Cheers.
Yes, I hope it gives up for you as well. I hope the rain stops at some point. Yeah, fascinating stuff. But we'll go back to Chris Hope outside Downing Street as soon as others start to go in. They'll get a bit wet walking up the driveway, won't they? Yeah. Joining us in the studio now, political commentator Peter Spencer. I suppose, you know, no matter what your political leanings and how grumpy you might feel about Labour getting in yesterday, and probably a lot of people watching do feel that way, you can't deny those human beings their moment, can you? To walk into number 10 as a cabinet minister for your first cabinet meeting must feel amazing.
Oh, absolutely right. Amazing and terrifying at the same moment, because there's a dawning and indeed burgeoning awareness that they've hardly done anything compared to what they're going to have to do. I mean, the interesting thing is that someone who is a shadow minister wakes up each morning and thinks, oh, I wonder what I'm going to be able to say today. When you're a minister, I wonder what I'm actually going to do today.
Yeah.
But of course, there's not just the transition of the humans. I mean, spare a thought for Larry the cat. The Starmers have a cat called Jojo. How are those two guys going to...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, they do indeed.
And apparently the Starmers have promised their children a dog.
A German Shepherd is the preferred option. And then we think back to Joe Biden, whose German Shepherd clearly decided that his snarly bite was better than the security guys' pistols. So so the auguries might not be quite so propitious.
Do you know, I just wondered that, you know, all of the cameras from all over the world were on Downing Street yesterday. Some must think elsewhere in the world, why does the Prime Minister of England, you know, live in a tiny little house?
That's a very, very good question. Well, I mean, the whole system is a bit on the crazy side. I mean, you were talking a little bit earlier on about the transition, like overnight it just happens, whereas in most comparable democracies, in actual fact, what happens is there is a lead time where these guys, A, get a bit of kit for a start, and B, just have a little bit of time, a little bit more face time with Sir Humphrey and all the rest of it, so that when they enter the job, they've got some idea how to do it.
And it's funny, when you go into 10 Downing Street, it's actually quite shabby. I thought it was a bit like a Burnley Inn.
It's big, though, when you go in.
But it's not as grandly appointed as you would imagine. But let's talk about the people who'll be around that coffin-shaped table today. Peter, David Lammy, Foreign Secretary, raised a few eyebrows there, been very critical of Donald Trump, very critical of Marine Le Pen. Ed Miliband, Energy Secretary, obsessed with net zero. People are concerned what that might cost them. Wes Streeting, the NHS is broken. Well, it is. Maybe it is, but now it's your job to fix it. They've got a massive in tray, the whole lot of them to fill.
They certainly have, and I think for the Foreign Secretary it's probably the hardest. As you rightly say, he didn't exactly give a ringing endorsement to Donald Trump, but also when you've got the rise of the far right in our immediate neighbours in France and Germany and so on, that somehow to negotiate that absolute minefield, if that's not a mixed metaphor, it is going to be extremely difficult, but it's also extremely important, because one of the new Prime Minister's key priorities is to reset relations with Europe and thus attract more inward investment and to rebuild the economy and make everyone actually feel and be a little bit richer. And he's starting from a difficult position, and on top of that, there is the fact that what he is hopefully heralding, what he's promising, is a period of stability. What we're looking at across the channel is a period of instability on those key players in the European Union.
Well, Peter, we'll leave it there for the moment. We're going to be debating this for months and months anyway. It's interesting you should talk about Starmer and he's getting his act together, because some of the columnists in today's newspapers are saying the one thing he needs to find very, very quickly is a bit of personality, because nowadays we expect that, and maybe to lead a team you need plenty of personality.
Has he even got one? I guess we'll find out.
Well, let's look at his leadership style. Let's ask psychologist Professor Binet Candola what they think of this. Very good morning to you. I mean, do you think the man does have any personality? And if he's hiding it, should he let it out a bit? Just as we see Angela Rayner arriving there.
Angela Rayner arriving, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Professor, do go on.
No, part of his personality is that he's reserved, and he keeps himself to himself, and he rarely kind of lets his guard down. He's kind of wary of other people if he doesn't know them, and he's sceptical of their intentions. But once you do get to know him, if you're part of that inner group of people that he really trusts, you see the real him. But part of his wariness and him being reserved is his personality.
See, Professor Gandola, a lot of talk about changing the party got tough with people like Jeremy Corbyn, got the hard line down there, but really the hard work begins today. £2.7 trillion in national debt, huge jobs to do on border control, on the NHS, on just getting the country back on its feet. When people are thrust into the spotlight like this, no matter what you did before, you have to find the resolve on day one, and that's a massive, massive challenge for anybody.
Yeah, and the positive sides of Keir Starmer is that people recognise that he is purposeful, and this isn't just looking at his political career; it's looking across his whole life, reading the biographies about him, and he's purposeful, he's determined, disciplined. And he does enjoy long-term planning, and he will set himself objectives. He likes to get things done and get things ticked off his to-do list. That does mean that in order to do that, sometimes the goals he sets himself won't necessarily be that stretching. On the other side of things, this reserve that he has can create difficulties for him in terms of forming relationships with his team. And because people don't get to know him, they may feel that he isn't interested in them. He's less empathetic than most people, and as a consequence, people may not feel included as part of his cabinet. And I think that relationship side of things, which what you were referring to actually, and talking about having no personality, is that reserve, kind of keeping himself to himself. But combined with that, he's very independent in his thinking, and he may be a little too enthusiastic in terms of expressing his own views and allowing other people to be able to do things their own way. And in terms of the challenges that people face, which what you're referring to, Martin, is that he will need to listen to other people, because the problems that we're faced with, the issues we're faced with, are too great for one person to deal with.
Well, they certainly are, because he's going to have to lead a team, isn't he? We'll leave it there. We'll see the personality shine out, I'm sure. He has to have. He's held big jobs before, hasn't he? He's led teams. He's been the director of public prosecutions. It's just that I think that if you're in opposition for a very long time, certainly with Labour and with so much of the media, particularly the old-fashioned press, getting at you all the time, maybe you learn a reserve because you are being judged on everything you say. Now he's got the job, he could actually be a bit bigger.
Well, maybe actually they all specifically and deliberately set out to be a bit boring, in as far as don't make it like all about the Boris show, don't make it all about the Nigel Farage show, don't make it about the calamity within the party. Let's actually be a bit boring, and maybe people might respond to that because they're actually just getting on with the job. I think we've got some footage on screen now. Angela Rayner there, we can see. She's got her umbrella.
Well, I don't blame her. She needs it.
She can do it. Then why didn't Rishi Sunak? And this is Angela Rayner arriving early, impressively early for that 10 o'clock.
She's Deputy Prime Minister. That must feel pretty good for her walking through that door. Shall we find out what the weather's got in store for you? Here's Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A cool and showery weekend to come. There could be some water on the roads. We do have a rain warning in for parts of Scotland this morning, particularly northeastern Scotland. But there's also some heavy outbreaks of rain across eastern areas of England, parts of North Wales too. And many of us are likely to see a shower through today. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around as well. In any sunshine, though, it's not going to feel too bad, particularly across the south coast, where we're a bit more sheltered from the breeze at time. So here we could see 19, possibly 20 degrees, but for most of us will be in the mid, possibly lower teens, with some fairly persistent rain lingering, particularly across northern areas into this evening. So further heavy rain to come throughout this evening, particularly across northeastern areas of Scotland. I think the heaviest rain there will still be through this morning. It will get a little bit lighter through the day, but there could still be some localised flooding issues. Showers across Northern Ireland, much of southern Scotland into northern areas of England as well. later on this evening. Fewer in the way of showers as we head further south, particularly towards the south coast. There will be a bit of a breeze through the English Channel as well throughout this evening too. Now, overnight tonight, that low pressure that's bringing that wet weather will slowly push away to the north and east, and behind it we will see clearer skies developing as we head into Sunday quite widely across the UK. We start to pick up more of a westerly breeze, so across western areas with more cloud around here and some showers too, a milder night. But in the clearer skies, we could be down into the mid-single figures. But that does mean there's a bit more sunshine around across eastern and some northern areas to start the day on Sunday. But across the south and west, heavy showers will push in through the day. Now, these could turn quite heavy. They could last a little while as well. The winds aren't quite as strong on Sunday, so that means the showers won't move through quite as quickly. So a further risk of some water on the roads, and again, temperatures a little below where they should be for this time in July. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for the Great British Giveaway now, and it's a big one. The chance to win a whopping 30 grand in tax-free cash. It's our biggest prize to date, so here's how you could win it.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, Joe Biden has been at it once again, and this time he's called himself a black woman. And we are not joking. We'll tell you all about it next. This is GB News Breakfast with Martin and Anne.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Do you put jam or cream first on your scone? Divisive.
A new study has found that 44% of Brits put jam on before the cream. Which is the right way to eat a scone?
In my opinion, definitely jam first. But I have to say, do you know what? As long as you enjoy it and it's delicious, and you've got nice scone, nice jam, amazing clotted cream, who cares?
Paul, why the jam first?
Because I love that chilled clotted cream that you hit first, then into that room temperature jam, and then that lovely baked scone.
And one of our viewers has written in and said actually she puts the jam on first because otherwise you would get it all over, as in it would wobble off on the top of the cream.
But I think it's easy to dribble the jam onto the cream. You're not spreading the jam onto the cream if you put it on top.
I would do jam first because it just seems to make less mess. So the jam spreads easy and just a dollop of cream on top.
Is there much of a market for the savoury ones that you have?
Yeah. You know, like when you're frying onions for a hot dog, like bare ground onions, fold that through your scone mix, bake your scone, so you've got this lovely kind of like roasted onion scone mix. Dawn isn't into it. Braised beef, clotted cream, horseradish and watercress.
Oh, my word.
Absolutely incredible.
Well, you're very adventurous, Paul, very adventurous.
Yeah. But think of it, you know, like when you make beef stew and you put those scones, drop scones on top, like a beef cobbler.
Yeah.
It's that inspiration.
Well, I would call it like a dumpling.
Well, do you think very quickly, do you think these will become a classic?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Because I think there's just so much more to clotted cream, scones than just the traditional cream tea.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Martin and Anne.
It's 8:26 now. President Joe Biden has said that only the Lord Almighty could make him quit the presidential race as he faces mounting pressure to step down.
We're not going to do that. You sure? Well, yeah, I'm sure. Look, I mean, if the Lord Almighty came out and said, Joe, get out of the race, I'll get out of the race. The Lord Almighty's not coming down.
What? Anyway, this all comes as the US president claimed to be a black woman in his latest gaffe on the campaign trail.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
The more you watch
really
it, the
that.
sillier it gets. And earlier on, we spoke to former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations, Steve Gill.
Beyond gaffe, there is a serious incapacity that Joe Biden is enjoying. We saw it, and unfortunately, the world saw it in the debate last Thursday. Both our friends across the world and our enemies, like Kim Jong-un and Putin and President Xi, everybody saw this. And I think it puts not only America in danger, but the world in danger to know this guy who's the leader of the free world is incapable of behaving and acting. And I think there's been too much in the U.S. focused on the politics of it, whether he should be the nominee for the Democrats again. He shouldn't keep being president with the level of incapacity he has shown, and he's not shown any improvement over the last 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, but just as Martin said there, he used that word, that, you know, gaffe prone. And maybe we can all understand that overall, he doesn't make gaffes. It's just the occasional one. And we live now in a social media world where you make one little gaffe and it'll be replayed and go viral, as they call it. I mean, maybe we should just shrug our shoulders and say, he knows what he's doing. He's got an administration that knows what they're doing. Let's not get hung up on a few gaffes.
Well, I don't think we have an administration that knows what they're doing. When you look at energy policy that has gas prices twice what they were, food prices, bread, eggs, milk, twice what they were when he took office. I mean, you look at the border, millions are flowing across the border illegally, and in foreign policy, it's not working. So I keep telling people the personality is the least of the problems with Joe Biden. It's the policies, and you don't fix that with Kamala Harris or any of the other Democrats. They will pursue the same failing policies, so you don't fix that. I will say some of the gaffes are over pushed. He was talking about the fact that there's no traffic congestion when he drives around now. When he was a senator, he had traffic. Now, doesn't have any. That was not a gaffe. He was making a joke. Maybe it was a joke most people didn't understand. But he's talking about that as president, you just kind of breeze through everywhere you're going.
OK, Steve, just to sort of try and figure out if this was a gaffe or something altogether more surreal, let's listen to that clip again.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
Now, Steve, I know we live in an era where we can all be whatever we want to be. We can all live whatever life we want. We can all transition. He might think he's a black woman.
No, he doesn't. That's not fair.
But the fact of the matter is, we know he was actually talking about Kamala Harris. But he just lost his way, and it's nakedly abundant. He can't string a sentence together. And if you can't string a sentence together...
No, but see, is that fair? Because he obviously can.
The evidence is there.
But yeah, but he doesn't talk like that all the time. I just wonder if we're not getting a bit too reactionary.
But I think the fact of the matter is, Steve, if he's making those sort of gaffes when he's not really under a lot of pressure, it was a pretty friendly interview last night. There wasn't a brutal cross-examination. There wasn't an audience. There wasn't Donald Trump in the studio. Can this guy be trusted with the big things like the nuclear codes?
Well, except Stephanopoulos pushed him several times. Are you willing to do a neurological exam? And he dodged and pushed back every time. But look, if I've been drinking and I'm in my car and the cops ask me to do a breathalyzer and I know I'm going to fail it, I'm refusing the test. Joe Biden knows he will fail a neurological test, so he's doing the right thing and refusing it. I do think the black woman thing was more getting tongue twisted rather than that he doesn't know what he's talking about. But he shows the other instances during the debate when he's just totally lost, he trails off. He gives every bit of evidence of somebody who's in mid stages to late stages of dementia, and that's what's scary.
I mean, I worry that we could be being seen to be unkind, showing that clip and giggling about it, except that he is deliberately putting himself up to be the leader of the free Western world, isn't he?
Yeah, if you're the president of the USA, then scrutiny comes with the job, and the scrutiny is becoming more and more abundant and more regular because he keeps failing the test.
And shouldn't he see that? Shouldn't he have a responsibility to get that and acknowledge it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, do stay with us. Aidan McGee will be here with all your sporting news. I'm going to let you talk football this time, because I know it's a big football day. I've had my talking about Wimbledon a bit, but, you know, we've got to look forward to this afternoon's match against Switzerland, 5 o'clock. Anyway, all of that's coming up next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Prince Harry obviously set up the Invictus Games in collaboration with Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, as part of their royal foundation, but Prince Harry took it under his wing separately. And last month he celebrated the 10th anniversary back in London. It's Invictus Games is an Olympic-style competition to help wounded veterans from various different countries with their rehabilitation through the power of sport. And that's what he's being honoured for. The reason he's got it is because of the positive impact, and I quote, on veteran communities through the power of sports. Pat Tillman, what the award is named after, he was a US war veteran. He was killed in Afghanistan in 2004. Prince Harry, of course, served 2 tours himself. Whether he deserves it, Martin, to answer your question, clearly the judges think that that is the case. Of course, I think what we're seeing from Prince Harry over the last couple of months is him really focusing on his passion, which is helping veterans and helping families of veterans, rather than what we've seen over the last few years, which is him talking about himself and complaining about his life as a working member of the royal family.
Now, Cameron, nobody can deny the importance of the Invictus Games. What an amazing achievement. Perhaps Prince Harry's finest achievement in terms of public relations.
Having someone like Prince Harry or another working member of the royal family with their fame can spotlight very worthy causes, such as the plight of veterans and those who feel like they've been left behind and do not have enough support when they come out of the British Armed Forces. And that's something, as you alluded to, Martin, that Prince Harry perhaps arguably has done very successfully over the last decade. And if Prince Harry's name wasn't on the Invictus Games, would it have done so well? That's probably the arguments they'd make. But as you say, not everyone's happy about the fact that Prince Harry's involved, but he is. Clearly, many people think he deserves it because he's getting this award in Los Angeles.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 8:34. It's time to talk sport because there's a big match on this afternoon, is there not? Aidan McGee?
It is indeed. Dusseldorf, 5 p.m. England take on Switzerland. And you know what, Anne? I said it a couple of hours ago, didn't I? I think if you'd given England the option of Switzerland in the quarter-final just a month ago, or even less than that, I think England would have taken that all day long. But things aren't as simple as that because Switzerland have proven themselves a decent side. They don't really have any notable pre-tournament or tournament pedigree up to now, but they're proving it this time. They've got a really good back three, strong goalkeeper, Granit Xhaka in the middle, and a decent striker as well. So they're going to pose problems for England. I want to bring in somebody who knows a thing or two about coping with pressure and playing for England. It's England's most capped international player. He's a good friend of mine, Peter Shilton. Good morning to you, Peter.
Aidan.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
I want to pick you up on something
morning,
because
yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, it was a story from Harry Kane, wasn't it, saying that older players who used to play for England back in the day, they have to understand what it is to wear the shirt. Did you feel, how much pressure did you feel going into these tournaments? I mean, you played 3 World Cups, I think it was, plus Euros as well. Is the pressure or the burden of playing for your nation as big as it is now?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, with social media and TV, it's, you know, it goes around the world, doesn't it? And, you know, obviously, you know, when you're representing your country, you know, you want to do really well. I mean, as a goalkeeper, it's, you know, if you do make an error that's, you know, costs the team, it's going to live with you through your career because these are the biggest tournaments.
And what about tonight, Peter? Would you like to see some changes? I mean, I don't know about you, but I felt that they've been able to get to the final third, but it's very much sideways passing. There's no dynamism there, is there?
No, it's been a little bit disappointed, I must admit. You know, we haven't really seemed to have got it right in terms of, you know, the team selection. Quite interested to read that Gareth may go with 3 at the back, you know. And,
what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, you know, we've gone to the tournament without a proper left back. It's Taken Shaw, who's, I think, you know, a great player, but he's obviously not fit. He was hoping he'll be fit. But up to now, we've really been struggling on the left side, you know, to balance it out. And because Trippier's gone in and done a job, but you want a real good left-footed player. So I think he may sort of play 3 at the back, Tonzo, you know, Stones and Walker, and then Trippier goes in his rightful position on the right as a wing-back, and Saka plays at wing-back because obviously you're not exposed as a left-back in a 4. So I think that might work. It would be certainly give us better balance and allow Bellingham, you know, and Foden, if he selects them, to get forward more, you know.
Shilts, Martin Dormer here in the studio. Nottingham Forest fan, I was there when Forest beat Liverpool 2-0 in the European Cup in 1978. Thank you very much for that lifelong treasured memory. On to today, penalties. I hate to even mention the P word, but nevertheless, we always worry about them. Shilts, as a keeper, how much pressure is on you and what advice could you give today to Jordan Pickford?
I don't think Jordan probably needs any advice from me because I think he's pretty decent at penalty shootouts. But it is a bit of a lottery as a keeper. You know, a lot of keepers, you can see with the Portugal keeper, you know, he saved the first 3 the other night, and last night he never got near them because a lot of keepers just guess and go the right way. And if you're lucky, you might save one. I used to try and wait as long as I could before I moved because a lot of times the ball goes straight down the middle or they miss-hit one. And you've gone too early. So it is a bit of a lottery, but it's obviously very challenging for the taker. I think these days, with penalty shootouts, they're better prepared. I mean, by that, I mean, they do a lot of analysing before the match about their penalty takers, keepers looking at which way they put it, and then the mental attitude. You see a lot of players really take a deep breath when the whistle goes, you know, and settle themselves, whereas we had none of that. I remember Bobby Robson just said in the semi-final in 1990 against Germany, you know, who wants to take a penalty? You know, this is when we're about to take them. So we didn't really plan as such in those days.
Peter, just on the defence, we were worried about it before the tournament, weren't we? We wondered whether it would be able to stand up to the rigours of a tournament like this, playing every few days, and the personnel were missing as well, Harry Maguire, etc. But it's actually stood up pretty well. It's done its job, and in particular, Jordan Pickford.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we've looked solid. I mean, what Jordan's had to do, and I think he's had a lot to do, but what he's had to do, he's typical Jordan. You know, he's enthusiastic. I love how he gets at the defence, keeps them on the toes. So that side of it's been good. I think the midfield area, as I've said, has been the balance, and there's still quite inexperienced players. You know, like Bellingham. He's not played a lot of international matches. You know, Mainu, just the same. So we kind of got inexperienced players in there. And, you know, Foden, you know, for England, I don't know if he builds himself up too much, but he doesn't play like he does at Man City. And it's only Kane and Bellingham that really look as though they might score.
Peter, before we love and leave you, I mean, obviously we're looking forward to this match tonight. Can we go all the way? That's something Prince William asked you just a few days ago. What did you say to him?
He didn't actually ask me that, Anne. I volunteered the information and said I started. Well, he threw me a little bit because he said, I believe about gambling harm, which is one of the reasons I got the CBE. I've done a lot of work with my wife in that area. And he threw me a bit because I thought he'd just talked to me about football. And I managed to swing it to Villa and then on to England. And I just said, by the way, I think we can win the Euros. You know, so I hope we do. Also, you'll think I'm a right mug.
Oh, lovely. And congratulations on the CBE. Well
Thanks,
deserved.
Thank you very much.
Great
Thanks,
moment.
Martin.
You've had some wonderful, wonderful moments in your life and your footballing career. But I'll bet you that was a wonderful moment going to Windsor Castle and being given that gong.
It was. I mean, I thought, you know, because of my wife, Steph, and Missy, her daughter, and Louis, the grandson, came as well, you know, into the actual ceremony, which, I mean, I've been to Buckingham Palace for the, without trying to sound, you know, a bit big-headed, MBE and OBE with the Queen, but that was a long time ago. But Windsor Castle is just fantastic. And they were actually 10 yards away, the way they did it, whereas in the Buckingham Palace, they were all herded together in like an area, you know, and it was a lot more personal. And I did say my wife has helped me a lot with the gambling, you know, she changed my life. And, you know, William looked over at her and she melted a bit when he looked at her. So that was a great memory.
Yeah, still on cloud nine, eh? Let's hope you're on cloud nine this afternoon.
That's right, Anne.
Cheers,
Yeah,
cheers.
we've got to win today, or
Yeah.
it's going to be a big depression, isn't it? You know?
And Prince William will blame you.
I never thought of that. Yeah. Come on, England.
Come on, England. Yeah.
Superb stuff. What a legend, absolute legend. Well
It's a
done.
lovely cup of tea, Peter Shaw. I went
Does
to
it
his house
indeed?
a couple of years ago. Yeah. In
Name dropper, tea
I know,
dropper.
I know. It was absolutely lovely.
In what way? Nice and strong?
Yeah, nice and strong. Like builder's tea. I'd been on a long journey. Just what I needed, you know, just like perked me up. But we went to see him when I think Maradona died, and he gave us some good insight into what he was playing in that game. And also when I was a kid down in August '86, I went down to Southampton to watch QPR play. Stood behind him he was in goal. Stood behind him in the terracing as an 8-year-old boy.
Oh, you
and
must
I got
have
a lesson. I wasn't a goalkeeper, but I got a lesson in how to manage your defence. He was more famous than his back four.
Yeah.
They just they danced to his tune and they won 5-1 that day.
There you go.
Brilliant.
Superb stuff, great stuff. Shields, what a ledge.
Absolutely. OK, thanks very much indeed. We'll be back in just a couple of moments with the newspapers.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The Royal Academy's annual exhibition has returned for the 256th time to Brighton the summer holidays. It's the world's oldest open submission exhibition. Anyone can enter work to be considered for inclusion. I'm joined now by art critic J.J. Charlesworth for his verdict. What is your verdict?
My verdict is you should go and see it. You are confronted with many things of varying quality, selected by artists, and you very much, instead of being given something to you that's supposed to be good, you have to make your own decision.
I went along yesterday, and I personally did see some pictures on the wall that I thought were absolutely stunning. I'm going to mention Peter Ucker, which I think is a remark. And now these are the two by Ben Jonson, Grundtvig 1, and we've got one coming out of Berlin Pool. I think that's an absolutely stunning piece of work. And then Claire Douglas should be up. Here we are, Claire Douglas.
Yes.
Souvenir from the Anthropocene.
Yeah.
That last one, actually, a very witty painting.
A piece like that was really interesting. I think it caught a lot of people's eye because it had very kind of humorous, slightly bleak take on post-Brexit Britain. It's set in this fictitious world of Brummington, which is a sort of loose satire on Birmingham. I thought it was a bit mean.
I think we had maybe Black Lives Matter. We had Boris Johnson. I think our own Jacob Rees-Mogg made his way into the painting.
Yeah, so there's definitely a slant, a political slant, on the part of the artist. But even that said, I thought it was an interesting and enjoyable work, even though maybe you don't agree with the artist on what they're trying to say. And I think that actually made for an interesting moment, because you're seeing that people are disagreeing, right? Both through the artwork and in front of artworks.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 8:46. It's time to dive inside the newspapers, joined by Kevin Schofield and Cindy Yu. Cindy, why don't we start with a story which has really caught our eye, and that's the ugly spectre of sectarian politics, which reared its head at the election yesterday.
Yeah, this is in the Mail, and we of course know about the 5 Labour MPs who lost their seats because of pro-Gaza independent MPs, but there are a number of Labour MPs who were really close to losing their seats. We talked about West Streeting, for example. Jess Phillips as well has had a really cut down, reduced majority in Birmingham, and the problem is that, you know, you can disagree with an MP, you can feel really strongly about Gaza, whatever it is, but what has happened to people like Jess Phillips has just been despicable in this election. You know,
she said it's the most. I mean, she's fought a few campaigns in her life.
Absolutely.
She said it's the most hate-filled campaign she's ever had.
That's shocking, because I remember her talking about violence against MPs during the Brexit negotiations and the referendum and all of that sort of stuff. We thought that was really, you know, I mean, we remember Joe Cox and all of that. But this, she was almost in tears at her.
It was a very powerful speech that she gave.
Yeah.
She'd been heckled.
I mean, it wasn't just heckling, it was hateful.
It was nasty.
Yeah, and apparently, you know, she had a female campaigner who was out on the streets by herself, being shouted at by a man, you know, about this and being filmed. You know, it's very, very threatening stuff.
And afterwards, they slashed the woman's tyres.
Yeah. And then there was also a fake recording of West Streeting, actually, a forged one, where he was meant to have been swearing at someone, saying that I don't effing care about Muslims, but it wasn't real. So it has really got to a very kind of aggressive moment. And you know what? What's happening in Gaza is totally appalling. I think everyone agrees with that. And I think there are a lot of moderate Muslims and people from Muslim parts of the country, of the world, I mean, who do care about it. And they have done it in moderate, peaceful ways. You know, we see the marches every single week, and most of that is peaceful. But this is totally beyond the pale. This is not how we do democracy here.
And also, Jonathan Ashworth lost his seat. One of the big hitters. He'd been in that cabinet meeting this morning, let's face it.
Yes, he would.
And he lost his seat.
He'd have a major job, wouldn't he?
Lost his seat to pro-Gaza independent. There was footage of him being heckled on the streets. He's a goner. Khalid Mahmood, he lost. And in Batley, Batley in Spain, the grammar school teacher, 3 years on, still in hiding, a pro-Gaza independent, Iqbal Mohammed, took 40% of the votes on a ticket of "This is for Gaza" in Batley. Nigel Farage has talked a lot about the rise of sectarian politics. A lot of people say, oh, don't be silly. We saw it in its full ugliness yesterday, Kevin.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting, I think, to see how these MPs adapt to life in Westminster. And, you know, it's one thing to be elected on a single issue ticket, but when you're an MP, you're representing everyone in your constituency, so they've got to get across all the housing policy, welfare, all these types of things as well.
And you take an oath of respect to the House, don't you, and to the King?
Absolutely. You know, so absolutely, I'm sure they will get plenty of opportunity to talk about Gaza, but they're going to have to vote on a whole panoply of issues as well that they're going to have to get across. And then you wonder whether the constituents will think that they've elected the right people. Who knows? They might turn out to... They might blossom in that environment, but I think it's going to be really, really difficult. If you're not from a political background, to suddenly be thrust into Westminster, it's going to be really tough.
And might it further embolden the protesters outside?
Yes, that's what I was...
No, we've
it
seen
just
so much
heightens
of
the
that.
level of acceptable protest, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, today we're seeing really big protests in London later today because timed for Keir Starmer's first week in government. But, you know, I think, Martin, we have to be careful here. You know, there are people who believe this fervently for good reasons and peacefully, right? There's not a... I don't think the protests going ahead is a problem. You know, most of the protesters are peaceful. But it's this, you know, it's a threatening of MPs, threatening of campaigners. That's not right. You know, it's the harm principle here we're talking about. You can absolutely civilly disagree with people. And what's happening in Gaza and Israel is incredibly divisive. And, you know, by the way, most of the developing world disagrees with the UK and the US on its approach to Israel. So it's a legitimate viewpoint to hold, but not in the methods that they are doing it here.
It's also interesting that George Galloway won his by-election just 3 or 4 months ago on a pro-Gaza ticket, and then lost his seat.
Who did he lose it to?
To Labour in Rochdale.
I wonder if Jeremy Corbyn, now that he's an independent MP also running on Gaza, if he'll become some kind of a figurehead for these other independent...
Well, I wonder whether they'll sort of become like a caucus really together, like a little group.
But Corbyn wouldn't approve of this sort of violence.
No, definitely not.
Hatred, would he?
No.
Yeah, but he's very slow to call it out. And the fact of the matter is, this was utterly grotesque. And Jess Phillips has been very outspoken about racism, Islamophobia, and suddenly she found herself on the receiving end of it, and it was a horrible, horrible spectacle. And I think I agree with you, Kevin. She stood up to them. I know you don't like it when a strong woman stands up to you. I thought that was a brilliant line. It was all men shouting at her.
Yeah, but it's a terrible look. And also, it's worth bearing in mind that she left the Labour front bench over this. You know, she would be... I mean, she might well still get a job, but, you know, she left the front bench last year to vote against Labour's position on Israel. So, you know, you think, well, what more could she have done, really,
she
to
surely
show
deserves
what side of the debate she was on?
But, because she's a cracking MP, isn't she? But... the things she wants to say might still be unacceptable to Keir Starmer.
Yeah, she can be a controversial figure. Yeah. You know, she says what she thinks.
Yes.
And that's not often good. And Keir Starmer, I see, was going to be running a short leash on his...
Kev, shall we have a quick nibble on independence? Because, of course, terrible night for the SNP. What might that mean for the dream of separation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the almost unnoticed elements of the result the other night, is that, you know, they've gone from 40-odd MPs down to 9. Quite a remarkable resurgence for Labour in Scotland, and the ramifications, obviously, for the SNP's cause of independence are enormous, because they put, certainly in their manifesto, they put independence literally line 1, page 1. A vote for the SNP is a vote for independence. So your pro-union parties can very well turn around and say, well, hang on a minute, you wanted to make this all about independence. The Scottish people have
What made the difference,
completely rejected it.
What has turned the table completely against them?
Well, what's interesting is that in opinion polls, support for independence in Scotland is still just maybe below 50%, but the SNP as a vehicle for that it's almost working against the cause, because we've had the Nicola Sturgeon, the camper van, all that type of stuff. And also, you know, Scottish people are, at the moment, more interested in the cost of living crisis, the economy, the NHS, the bread and butter stuff that voters across the UK are more interested in than independence. So while the SNP talk about independence, Scottish people are like, well, hang on a minute. I think at the moment, we might come back to that at some stage, but we'd rather discuss the bread and butter.
5 years ago, would you ever have thought?
No.
You're living in Scotland, you'd almost made up your mind that the SNP are going to be ruling the roost.
Well, they won 48 MPs the last time.
The whole of the Scottish map was yellow.
Well, the one to keep an eye on now is at 2026 is the Scottish Parliament elections. That's the next one, is whether they can hang on to power there, because by then they'll have been in power for 19 years.
OK, well, we've got to leave it there, but it's a fascinating picture to end on, isn't it? And find out what the weather's doing for you.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. A cool and showery weekend to come. There could be some water on the roads. We do have a rain warning in for parts of Scotland this morning, particularly northeastern Scotland. But there's also some heavy outbreaks of rain across eastern areas of England, parts of North Wales too. And many of us are likely to see a shower through today. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around as well. In any sunshine, though, it's not going to feel too bad, particularly across the south coast, where we're a bit more sheltered from the breeze at time. So here we could see 19, possibly 20 degrees, but for most of us will be in the mid, possibly lower teens, with some fairly persistent rain lingering, particularly across northern areas into this evening. So further heavy rain to come throughout this evening, particularly across northeastern areas of Scotland. I think the heaviest rain there will still be through this morning. It will get a little bit lighter through the day, but there could still be some localised flooding issues. Showers across Northern Ireland, much of southern Scotland into northern areas of England as well later on this evening. Fewer in the way of showers as we head further south, particularly towards the south coast. There will be a bit of a breeze through the English Channel as well throughout this evening too. Now overnight tonight, that low pressure that's bringing that wet weather will slowly push away to the north and east, and behind it we will see clearer skies developing as we head into Sunday quite widely across the UK. We start to pick up more of a westerly breeze, so across western areas with more cloud around here and some showers too, a milder night, but in the clearer skies we could be down into the mid-single figures. But that does mean there's a bit more sunshine around across eastern and some northern areas to start the day on Sunday, but across the south and west heavy showers will push in through the day. Now these could turn quite heavy, they could last a little while as well. The winds aren't quite as strong on Sunday, so that means the showers won't move through quite as quickly. So a further risk of some water on the roads, and again temperatures a little below where they should be for this time in July. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
How deep is the rift between Prince William and Prince Harry? Well, it's been reported that Prince William is refusing to speak to Prince Harry and has even taken on the role of disciplinarian, which was once, of course, the job of Prince Philip. But has that job gone now to William?
After the death of his mother, I know that Prince William had to think again. And then we see him with the Emperor and Empress of Japan. And William thought again, do I want to do this job? Because there's nothing in our uncodified, unwritten constitution that says anybody has to be heir to the throne. And he thought about it. He was only 15 at the time. And he decided he did, and he's done his duty, in great contrast to Prince Harry. Now, I don't think there's any chance at all of there being a reconciliation with the brothers now or in the foreseeable future. It goes back to Oprah Winfrey interview, then the book Spare, and all the things that were said in the Netflix 6-part series. Too much bad blood, and William is not going to forgive that, principally because he, of course, and his wife attacked personally his wife, Kate. And even when the announcement of her cancer was made, their mealy-mouthed response to it didn't show any great concern to her. Okay. Because William looks at them and he would say what most people would say. All of this is completely unnecessary. It is unnecessary. Prince Harry has had a wonderful, privileged life. He owes everything to being a member of the royal family. People who are struggling, people who are battling, would wonder why he's so upset.
The People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock and the work starts here for the new Prime Minister.
So Keir Starmer takes the keys to number 10 in a landslide victory.
as the new leader appoints his government with the NHS, immigration and housing top of the agenda.
And of course, this all comes as Sir Keir Starmer and his new cabinet prepare to meet for the first time later this morning.
Now, feeling blue? Well, Rishi Sunak licks his wounds in the worst ever result for the Conservative Party, but displays graciousness in defeat.
I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss.
And of course, who's going to replace him as the new Tory leader, as a civil war, frankly, is breaking out behind the scenes?
And what does Boris Johnson think? Well, he says don't reform. He's warning the Tories to avoid merging with Reform UK and Nigel Farage as he offers advice on how to fix the broken party.
Talking of divine intervention, Joe Biden claims that only the Lord Almighty would make him drop out of the presidential race, as he weirdly describes himself as a black woman.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
It just gets stranger the more you watch it. And should we let criminals serve prison sentences at home in a bid to tackle overcrowding in our jails? We'll be debating that later in the show.
The parents of missing teen Jay Slater are given permission formally to hire a private team in Tenerife to search for their son. And they hit back at internet trolls who've accused them of mismanaging their GoFundMe page.
Hello, good morning. A little bit of a disappointing weekend to come, particularly for July. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
It's just gone 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Ann Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast. And of course, a bit later on, we'll be talking about the big match this afternoon.
Yep.
Which, how are you going to stay awake for it? Well, You've done so much television over the last few days.
Yeah, I've done 7 shifts in 5 days. 3 o'clock start today. what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a quick pint after the show. I know it's the morning, but it's lunchtime for me. I'm going to bed for a couple of hours, and I'll get back up and steam into it. And you've got to bring home the bacon today, Gareth Southgate, because otherwise I think my heart might pack up.
How will you be watching it?
Down the booze with the lads.
Oh, you will?
Yeah.
Good atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, and you can drink to forget if it's not a good day.
Oh, don't say that. You've got to talk it up, I think.
Yeah, look, I just think it's time to deliver now. We've had a terrible tournament so far, but, you know, we have to believe in miracles. We have to believe that there is a new way forward. And I keep getting called negative all week for being downbeat, but I think that's the benefit of history.
Yeah, you're not terribly impressed with Gareth Southgate's management, are you?
I don't think he should have ever got the job in the first place.
I know.
But he is the gaffer today, so I guess we need to get behind.
And he's made a few changes, so you never know. Anyway, we'll be talking football. I was enjoying talking tennis earlier because we're doing so well in the tennis.
Yeah.
But the football is... Well, we may do well. We've got to talk it up, haven't we? And here we are. I mean, it's the start of a new era as far as every one of us is concerned, because we've got a new government. When I woke up this morning, I was thinking, does it feel any different? And it was nothing but thunder and lightning outside. What does that say? But it is a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new government, it's a new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, it's a new cabinet meeting, which he'll be holding in about an hour's time. They're already beginning to arrive at number 10. And he'll be putting into place his new agenda for the next 5 years.
Yeah, well, let's take a moment to remind ourselves what Sir Keir Starmer promised yesterday in his first speech outside 10 Downing Street.
If you voted Labour yesterday, we will carry the responsibility of your trust as we rebuild our country. But whether you voted Labour or not, in fact, especially if you did not, I say to you directly, my government will serve you. Politics can be a force for good. We will show that. We've changed the Labour Party, returned it to service, and that is how we will govern. Country first, party second.
Well, we've just seen Angela Rayner there. You can see her now getting her brolly out. Now, she's leaving Downing Street this morning, but she's still got... she's probably forgotten something.
Yeah, so
she's gone back to get it.
She's probably popped out for a crafty fag. It starts at 10 o'clock, that meeting. She came in about 8:15. She's just nipping out for something, and she'll be back in there for when it all kicks off. Anyway, it all starts. The government in earnest starts 10 a.m.
But there she is, getting into her ministerial car because she is now the Deputy Prime Minister. Of course, all of these events could only have come about after the Conservatives were truly trounced in the election. Record losses of 251 seats. But on his way out, Rishi Sunak was graceful.
Following this result, I will step down as party leader, not immediately, but once the formal arrangements for selecting my successor are in place. It is important that after 14 years in government, the Conservative Party rebuilds, but also that it takes up its crucial role in opposition professionally and effectively.
So the big question next, of course, is who will replace Rishi Sunak? Well, Bookie's favourites previously, Penny Mordaunt, lost her seat, as did former Prime Minister Liz Truss. So let us know in the comments, who do you think should be the new Tory leader? gbnews.com/your say.
So let's go down to Downing Street again, shall we, and join GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope. Morning, Christopher. Why was Angela Rayner leaving?
I don't know. It's still raining here in Downing Street. It's been raining for the past 24 hours, as far as I can make out. No, Angela Rayner arrived for a meeting in a bright orange dress and now has left and been driven away in what looked like a government car. I think that's quite a good thing, probably, for Keir Starmer, because that relationship between Angela Rayner and Sir Keir Starmer, the Deputy Leader and, of course, the Prime Minister, is so important to get right. And there has been some tension in the past, notably back in 2021 when Angela Rayner called Tories scum and then took a while to apologise, and so it went on. So that relationship is absolutely crucial to ensure this government gets off to the right start. So a pre-meeting before the Cabinet meeting, I think, makes a degree of sense. I don't know why she's left. She wouldn't tell us. She gave us a big grin. She certainly wasn't looking as grim as the clouds above me, so she looked quite jolly. Also gone into number 11 Downing Street is Rachel Reeves. Of course, they're all gathering, all the Cabinet are gathering around 10:30 for the first Cabinet meeting of this new government, hitting the ground running. And then we're expecting a press conference, and I'll be there for GB News asking the PM a question around lunchtime, so do stay tuned all morning.
Chris, now the true work starts. They talk about changing the country, and of course, that's their mandate. But what are they going to change the country with? £2.7 trillion in debt. Rachel Reeves, in particular, old Mother Hubbard will find the cupboard bare. What can they do? A lot of people talking, Chris, the only way out of this conundrum is to raise taxes.
Well, what they've got to do is get economic growth. That is the most important thing this government can do. Liz Truss tried that idea, didn't she, but went too quickly, too fast for the markets. They've got to take the markets with them and do a budget probably in September, an autumn statement in September, which will do something to get this country growing and once the growth happens, then they can start spending money in the way they want to. They have told us they won't increase taxes during the election campaign. We know that, don't we? In certain areas, VAT, national insurance, income tax. Other areas not talked about. There's rumours about some form of wealth tax, maybe capital gains tax, stamp duty on shares, pensions, elsewhere. We don't know yet, or council tax. We don't know yet. Certainly nothing fiscally from this government for 10 weeks. We've heard that from Rachel Reeves. There's a lock on all government spending. The OBR, this independent forecasting in the Treasury group, must check all spending and tax decisions. So that's really for the autumn. So right now, what can happen? Well, probably they'll make some strong words on small boats. They're going to axe this Rwanda plan from day one. So far, £270 million spent by the Tory government on setting up a reception area in Rwanda for migrants arriving here illegally. That'll be scrapped. That's all gone. That's gone for the birds. They will save £100 million by not paying 2 more payments on that in 2025. 2026, but I think, yeah, that might be the early moves. But for Sir Keir Starmer, he wants to get this cabinet focused. We heard from Wes Streeting today. He says the NHS is now broken and he wants to try and fix it. Well, I think personally, only a Labour government can fix the NHS because they can carry the workforce with them. He's got to get also this junior doctors' strike sorted out. He says he'll have meetings within the next 10 days to try and deal with this year-long strike by junior doctors to get that waiting list down and get so many people, our viewers, listeners, everyone else who are suffering on waiting lists, get them some treatment. Lots of urgency around this government. And of course, for Sir Keir Starmer, He's off to America on Tuesday, where he meets world leaders at a NATO summit. So it's all go for this government.
Yeah, it is. And very clearly, if he's off to America so soon, then he's got to give everybody a job and say, go do it and do it now. Because when I come back, I want it done. OK, Chris, we'll leave you in Downing Street under the rain. Sorry about that, especially as you've been on air for about the 25th hour or something running. But we'll come back to you a bit later on. Let us know if anything interesting happens out there.
And just an interesting quick point before we move on. Chris Hope bet Rishi Sunak a pint of beer that not a single person would be flown to Rwanda, as in deported, not voluntarily. He won that bet. Sir Keir Starmer today has scrapped Rwanda. Not a single... Two people left voluntarily. But nobody was actually deported. The Rwanda plan was proven to be a complete and utter white elephant.
And a huge amount of money has been spent on it.
Billions.
And will Rwanda pay it back?
No. Of course they won't. It's all gone.
Once you've parted with money, it never comes back.
That's right.
Really?
Well, join us now to discuss the Labour cabinet is the former Labour Minister Sean Simon. Welcome to the show, Sean. He's coming up.
Oh,
a lot of questions to ask him.
Somewhere.
Here we go. Right,
there
so
we
you've
are.
been
Hello.
a minister before, Sean. Let's talk about this cabinet meeting. All eyes now are on the Labour Party. They can't blame the Conservatives anymore. They're at the helm, they're in power, and what an inbox that cabinet faces. David Lammy looking over a precarious situation, both sides of the Atlantic and into France. Ed Miliband, Energy Secretary, we know he's obsessed with net zero. Could we see bigger bills? Wes Streeting, the NHS is broken. Well, now you're at the helm. The Labour Party have to start fixing broken Britain. Are they up to the job?
I mean, we'll see, won't we? They're a mixed bag of people with quite different backgrounds and experience. We've got some people in that cabinet who are really experienced at the heart of government. I mean, Keir Starmer himself, people forget, he was, as Director of Public Prosecutions, he was the Chief Executive of the Crown Prosecution Service, 7,000 staff, £500 million budget. He's actually the only incoming Prime Minister this country's ever had who's got serious executive experience of actually running something beforehand. And there are others in the cabinet like Pat McFadden. Miliband, you say he's definitely got a line on the environment, but he's also got a lot of experience in government. And there's a few others with experience, and then there's quite a lot of others without any experience. And we really don't know how well this team is going to perform. As Keir Starmer said, now is the time. It's about doing, not talking, and we'll see what they're made of.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think people who are worried about all these inexperienced and unknown names to them, maybe, ought to remind themselves that over the last 14 years, we've had people plucked out and suddenly given cabinet jobs. Their names we didn't know, their experience we weren't sure of at all. We put up with them, so we should put up with what we get now from Keir Starmer.
Yeah, although, to be fair, they did make an absolute mess of the country. Although if you go back to Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, like whatever you think about the pair of them and how things eventually went over the years in government, neither of them had any experience of government at all. And I think most people would agree, even if they ended up not liking them, that they hit the ground running. They made an impact. They did change Britain, even if you didn't like the ways that they changed it in. But I mean, you said it's all on Labour now. They can't blame the Tories. I mean, obviously that is true, and yet equally obviously they are going to try and keep blaming the Tories for a long, long time. Just like the Tories did when they got in 2010, they were incredibly disciplined. Every Tory minister you ever heard on the TV or radio for years and years, they would start by saying, it's all the fault of the Labour Party. They spent all the money. They left the country in a bad state. And we're going to hear that from Labour. The Tories have left us a terrible inheritance, and it's going to be a really slow and difficult job to fix anything and make any difference. And that is going to be true. There is not going to be any quick, big fix to anything because the problems are too big and government is too difficult to make a big change overnight.
But Sean Simon, how long will that honeymoon period last? You can't keep blaming the other team for everything. You know, the Labour Party are now behind the steering wheel. when are we going to see this fabled change? You know, we've still got potholes, we've still got waiting lists, we've still got record immigration, we've still got the same old problems, but with a change of management and with no money in the bank, £2.7 trillion in debt. Realistically, what's going to change anytime soon?
Well, I mean, realistically, nothing big and noticeable is going to change anytime soon. It is going to take, you know, years rather than months, to be honest, for people to notice really big changes in the economy, in the public services. You don't just not change that kind of thing overnight. You don't really change it in 3 months or even 6 months. It takes a long, long time. And you said honeymoon period. Another interesting thing is, I'm not sure this Labour government will get a honeymoon period. They, as we know, this very unusual election, they've come in with a huge majority, but actually without a big wave of national affection. We know that a lot of people weren't voting for Labour, they were voting against the Conservatives. This was an election about getting them out. So I don't think there is necessarily a huge reserve of goodwill that they've got to, they'll have to call on. They'll be in a difficult position right from the beginning.
And that's going to be awful for the people. I know some particularly young people who voted Labour because they believe. They really believe. And in fact, that's what Keir Starmer actually said. It's pictured here on the front page of The Guardian. We will fight every day until you believe again. And if you're right about the fact that it's going to take an awful long time.
Years.
Yeah, that it's going to be a long time before we can believe. Gosh, it's going to be so problematic for some of the people, young people I know, who voted Labour because they believe already that things are going to change from today, frankly. Sean, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's hope it's quicker than you believe.
If he was still a current minister, the chief whip would be right on the phone to him.
Yeah, he would.
If he was really honest, he's going to take years rather than months. We're not going to see any real change anytime soon. And actually, I think that's the reality.
But if you were Keir Starmer, wouldn't you want to be in this cabinet meeting now? You want to be identifying a few things that you can actually maybe achieve. Yeah. Because how long did it... Tony Blair came into power promising to cut the waiting lists, and he did. How long did that take?
It was a matter of months, but they had loads of money.
And it was different times.
Comparatively,
yes, it was.
We were in the clover, we were in the green. As a nation, we could spend to stimulate. Now we're simply potless. That's the truth.
Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall in that cabinet meeting today? They'll be having a photographer in to take that official photograph, and then they clear them out and they get on with the real business. It would be fun to stay for the real business, wouldn't it? Hear what's going on. However, yes, if you believed that there was going to be a rainbow in the sky this morning and then lots of sunshine, it sort of hasn't happened. But maybe the governments can't quite achieve that for us. At 17 minutes past 9, let's talk about the weather. Because there's this thing called Hurricane Beryl on the way, isn't there? Now moving towards the coast of Texas, and it's been fatal. It's killed at least 10 people. I think that's going to prove to be more across the Caribbean and causing this awful landfall in Mexico. Yeah, officials have warned the coastal residents in the southern states to prepare for the storm heading their way. And it's heartbreaking. But, you know, it's not very good here either. It just keeps begging the question, what on earth is happening with our weather? Here's the weather journalist Nathan Rao. Hello.
Good morning. Oh, I don't like that look.
No, I know.
I feel like I'm in trouble.
Well, some weather presenters are having a tough time in the street.
I bet they are.
And I don't... And blamed.
Is that right? I probably am going to be one of the people going up to them and harassing them, because aren't we all just fed up with this? It's absolutely horrible. I was in last week talking about a heat wave. Yes. We were all very hopeful it was going to last. And by the time I'd walked out the studio, I think it was on its way out, and there is no sign of it coming back. And the weather is... I put my heating on yesterday in the beginning of July, and there doesn't seem to be any real change from the weather we're getting in the UK at the moment. We're in this very unsettled period. What you never want to hear at this time of year, at the beginning of July, is the two words jet stream south and low pressure. And what we have is the jet stream south and low pressure. What you want to hear is high pressure, because high pressure is what brings the lovely sunshine and blue skies and hot weather in the summer. We got a bit of it last week. There is a slight hint of high pressure to the northeast. It's called the Scandinavian high, but it's not getting close enough. And what we've got really for the next week, even though it may get a little bit warmer, is more rain, I'm afraid. And really, you can only tell about a week to 10 days ahead. So going any further of that would be quite foolish on my behalf, quite frankly, because if I was to give anyone any promises, I'd probably get lynched in the street myself. So all I can offer you, I'm afraid, is pretty much take your brolly with you, put your washing line away, Martin, because you're not going to need it. If you do get some sunshine...
I tell you what, just to interrupt, Martin, you've got to tell us the saga of the washing line, because a lot of people won't know, but this is maybe a warning to you.
Well, like a lot of people out there, you hang your laundry out and it starts raining, you think, I'm going to leave it out there because the rain's going to stop and it would just dry itself. It didn't for 3 days. My laundry was so heavy, my washing line collapsed. I've got to buy a new washing line, and I'm too tight to put the heating on. It's July, I'm not doing that. As a consequence, the laundry's piling up and now my washing line's broken. Is this going to go away?
No, and I have to say, actually, Martin, if you looked up at the sky yesterday and you still put your washing out, you deserve everything you get, because it's absolutely horrible. No sympathy. Look, if you get some sunshine, where you get some sunshine, it is July. It will feel warm. The temperatures are going to rise next week, around 20, nothing too special. 20, 21, that's sort of OK for this time of year. But what we're really looking at is this jet stream stuck over us. And the jet stream is that fast ribbon of air that flies around the Northern Hemisphere. There's two of them, and one on the south. Our one is right over us. That's bringing in low pressure from the Atlantic, or bringing it close to us. And it's keeping us in this risk of wet weather. So in terms of the UK weather, not much I can promise.
No, and they're having such a terrible time with Hurricane Beryl in the Caribbean.
Yes.
Texas now.
Yep, and Hurricane Beryl, she is an absolute monster. She woke up in a very, very bad mood. Now, Hurricane Beryl overnight has been downgraded to a tropical storm as she moves over the Yucatan Peninsula, which is that little pokey out bit on the side of Mexico. Yep. But she is going to move back into the Gulf of Mexico. And what hurricanes love is warm tropical waters. And she is expected to reclassify to a Category 1 hurricane as she re-enters Mexico and goes along the southern coast of Texas.
Now, the point is, if you live in those islands in the Caribbean or along that coastline, you expect hurricanes, but in hurricane season. This is too early for hurricane season.
Well, it is actually hurricane season. The hurricane season runs from the 1st of June to the 1st of November. What has been unusual about Beryl is the intensity. She intensified from Category 1 to Category 4 in 10 days. And to get a Category 5 storm, hurricane, at this time of year, that is what's unusual. And in the Caribbean, she has caused a lot of damage. Not as much damage as she could, actually, because her original trajectory was to go right over the Cayman Islands and Jamaica. She actually stayed a bit to the south. So they sort of got off a bit lightly, if you can even say that. Unfortunately not. It's led to fatalities. But now it's the southern coast of the USA and Mexico that's in the firing line for the start of the week.
But I think what seems to be the message that's coming through now more and more is you just can't rely on what was usual about weather anymore.
No, and I mean, as I said, this is hurricane season. It's unusual to have a hurricane. The last one we had was Hurricane Emily, which is a Category 5. That was in 2006, I think. But this is very unusual. And we get round... I mean, we are in an El Nino year, and what that means is, to cut a very long story short, the waters around the south coast of America are warmer than they usually are. That's called El Nino. The opposite of that is La Nina, where they cool, and we're swinging into that. And all of that can sort of have a knock-on effect on the global weather patterns, and that's thought to be adding to the increased hurricane season this year. But then we also look at things like higher than above average ocean temperatures, which may be contributing to this as well.
Nathan Rao, rain, go away. Not you. Rain, go away.
And get yourself a tumble dryer.
I have to. Yeah. I'm too tight for that. Anyway, let's see what Annie Shuttleworth has got in store for you with your weather today.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A cool and showery weekend to come. There could be some water on the roads. We do have a rain warning in for parts of Scotland this morning, particularly northeastern Scotland. But there's also some heavy outbreaks of rain across eastern areas of England, parts of North Wales too. And many of us are likely to see a shower through today. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around as well. In any sunshine, though, it's not going to feel too bad, particularly across the south coast, where we're a bit more sheltered from the breeze at time. So here we could see 19, possibly 20 degrees, but for most of us will be in the mid, possibly lower teens, with some fairly persistent rain lingering, particularly across northern areas into this evening. So further heavy rain to come throughout this evening, particularly across northeastern areas of Scotland. I think the heaviest rain there will still be through this morning. It will get a little bit lighter through the day, but there could still be some localised flooding issues. Showers across Northern Ireland, much of southern Scotland into northern areas of England as well later on this evening. Fewer in the way of showers as we head further south, particularly towards the south coast. There will be a bit of a breeze through the English Channel as well throughout this evening too. Now overnight tonight, that low pressure that's bringing that wet weather will slowly push away to the north and east, and behind it we will see clearer skies developing as we head into Sunday quite widely across the UK. We start to pick up more of a westerly breeze, so across western areas with more cloud around here and some showers too, a milder night, but in the clearer skies we could be down into the mid single figures. But that does mean there's a bit more sunshine around across eastern and some northern areas to start the day on Sunday, but across the south and west heavy showers will push in through the day. Now these could turn quite heavy, they could last a little while as well. The winds aren't quite as strong on Sunday, so that means the showers won't move through quite as quickly, so a further risk of some water on the roads, and again temperatures a little below where they should be for this time in July. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
When I see that lady in the bath blowing bubbles, I just think, oh, I'd like to be there doing that. But it's the Great British Giveaway now, and it's a big one because it's the chance to win a whopping 30 grand in tax-free cash. It's our biggest prize to date. Here's how you could win it.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
And coming up, stay with us because we'll be finding out why Joe Biden has been calling himself a black woman. This is Breakfast with Martin and Anne.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
He fell into a coma. His family, of course, absolutely distraught. Because Turkey is outside the European Union, it therefore doesn't count under the Global Health Insurance Card scheme, which means that he is liable for these costs, and the family say that he's being held there for until they pay at least half the £41,000 that is owed.
One of our viewers here saying their premium, because they have health conditions, can be as much as £1,000. But if they're going to go overseas to, as you say, a non-EU country, they still should take it. That's the message here, isn't it? Don't take the risk.
Absolutely. Now, if you do have lots of pre-existing medical conditions, or you're an older person, my lovely mother-in-law is going to be 95 this week. She's still travelling, but only within Europe. And only because the cost of insurance is going to be many times the cost of the trip. And she just thinks, OK, well, I'll get emergency medical treatment free if I'm in the European Union and I've got that GHIC card. But beyond that, absolutely not. It's not worth the risk.
You have to have your card, do you, Simon, to get treatment within the EU? You should just apply for that online.
You should certainly apply for it online. Don't go to any of the scam sites that want to charge you money for it, because it's a free card. But actually, if you haven't, it's absolutely not a huge problem. Yes, you have to go through a bit of rigmarole, or at least your family do, to sort it out. But in general, if you go to a public hospital, they will treat you first and ask questions later in the European Union. And if you're a British resident, you should get it for free. Even if you forgot to get the G-Hit card, they will sort it out eventually.
Britain's election channel. GB News, the People's Channel. Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's exactly 9:30. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Martin and Anne.
Now, President Joe Biden has said only the Lord Almighty could make him quit the presidential race as he faces mounting pressure to step down.
We're not going to do that. You sure? Well, yeah, I'm sure. Look, I mean, if the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I'll get out of the race. The Lord Almighty's not coming down.
He looks as though he's been out in the sun too long, doesn't he?
Fake tan.
Do you think?
He looked deathly pale at the previous TV debate, so he's had a makeover. A Trump-style fake tan.
Well, yeah. OK. Well, Trump is usually a bit orange.
That's right.
Biden there was pink.
Yeah.
What's going on? And, of course, this is all going on as President Biden claims to... Well, he did a radio interview in which he claimed, he said, he was a black woman. It's his latest gaffe. It didn't sound good. I'm sure he didn't mean it, but he said it. Do you want to hear it?
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
It gets more ridiculous the more you watch it. And earlier on, we spoke to former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations, Steve Gill.
Beyond gaffe, there is a serious incapacity that Joe Biden is enjoying. We saw it, and unfortunately the world saw it in the debate last Thursday. Both our friends across the world and our enemies like Kim Jong-un and Putin and President Xi, everybody saw this. And I think it puts not only America in danger, but the world in danger to know this guy who's the leader of the free world is incapable of behaving and acting. And I think there's been too much in the U.S. focused on the politics of it, whether he should be the nominee for the Democrats again. He shouldn't keep being president with the level of incapacity he has shown, and he's not shown any improvement over the last 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, but just as Martin said there, he used that word, that, you know, gaffe-prone, and maybe we can all understand that overall, he doesn't make gaffes. It's just the occasional one. And we live now in a social media world where you make one little gaffe and it'll be replayed and go viral, as they call it. I mean, maybe we should just shrug our shoulders and say, he knows what he's doing. He's got an administration that knows what they're doing. Let's not get hung up on a few gaffes.
Well, I don't think we have an administration that knows what they're doing. When you look at energy policy that has gas prices twice what they were, food prices, bread, eggs, milk, twice what they were when he took office. I mean, you look at the border, millions are flowing across the border illegally, and in foreign policy, it's not working. So I keep telling people the personality is the least of the problems with Joe Biden. It's the policies, and you don't fix that with Kamala Harris or any of the other Democrats. They will pursue the same failing policies, so you don't fix that. I will say some of the gaffes are over pushed. He was talking about the fact that there's no traffic congestion when he drives around now. When he was a senator, he had traffic. Now, doesn't have any. That was not a gaffe. He was making a joke. Maybe it was a joke most people didn't understand, but he's talking about that as president, you just kind of breeze through everywhere you're going.
OK, Steve, just to sort of try and figure out if this was a gaffe or something altogether more surreal, let's listen to that clip again.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a
black president.
Now, Steve, I know we live in an era where we can all be whatever we want to be. We can all live whatever life we want. We can all transition. He might think he's a black woman.
No, he doesn't. That's not fair.
But the fact of the matter is, we know he was actually talking about Kamala Harris. But he just lost his way, and it's nakedly abundant. He can't string a sentence together. And if you can't string a sentence together...
No, but see,
Steve,
is that fair? Because he obviously can.
The evidence is there.
But yeah, but he doesn't talk like that all the time. I just wonder if we're not getting a bit too... reactionary.
But I think the fact of the matter is, Steve, if he's making those sort of gaffes when he's not really under a lot of pressure, it was a pretty friendly interview last night. There wasn't a brutal cross-examination. There wasn't an audience. There wasn't Donald Trump in the studio. Can this guy be trusted with the big things like the nuclear codes?
Well, except Stephanopoulos pushed him several times. Are you willing to do a neurological exam? And he dodged and pushed back every time. But look, if I've been drinking and I'm in my car and the cops ask me to do a breathalyzer and I know I'm going to fail it, I'm refusing the test. Joe Biden knows he will fail a neurological test, so he's doing the right thing and refusing it. I do think the black woman thing was more getting tongue twisted rather than that he doesn't know what he's talking about. But he shows the other instances during the debate when he's just totally lost, he trails off. He gives every bit of evidence of somebody who's in mid stages to late stages of dementia, and that's what's scary.
And it is scary, I suppose. Yeah. One doesn't wish to be unkind, but it is scary. And I found it very interesting what Nancy Pelosi says the other day. What was she, former head of the...
The First Lady, the Speaker. No, the Speaker. Yeah, Speaker.
Yeah. And she said that the main question to ask is it an episode or is it a condition? Mm. And it's happened so often now, how could you say it's not a condition? It's
interesting, you know, and I've speaking to a lot of senior Republicans on this, and they're not exactly enjoying the spectacle. As you said,
no, they're not.
It feels cruel, it feels harsh, and it just feels like now, like the people around him, those closest to him, they have to have an intervention and say, it's time for the sake of yourself, for the sake of the country, for the sake of the free world, to stand aside.
But he won't. No. And very clearly his family are supportive of him because otherwise they'd talk him out of it, wouldn't they?
They wouldn't do it.
How do you remove a sitting president from being considered to be candidate for the next presidency?
We've got long left because the election is on bonfire night.
How do you force it on him? It's very... I mean, I just find it really uncomfortable, and it shouldn't be, should it? It should be exciting about the man who might be the next president of the United States. Definitely. Instead, it's worrying and horrible to see. If it were child, it would be child abuse.
Yeah, and people are saying it's elder abuse. It just seems really, really almost borderline cruel. Time to end it.
Mm. They've got to sort it out, haven't they? Anyway, do stay with us because you'll love this. There was an emergency evacuation at Heathrow Airport, caused flight delays, travel chaos. What's going on? We'll find out. That's next. You're watching GB News Breakfast with Martin and Anne.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Criminal barrister Tony Wyatt. Tony, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Right, so talk to me. What have you been up to since we last spoke?
More writing and pulling my hair out. The state of our courts.
I want to get your view on a few things, and seeing as you're a barrister. Rishi Sunak's come up with his Rwanda plan. Everyone sort of poo-pooing that. And Keir Starmer's come out with his border command. Is it something that may well stop traffickers from trafficking people across the channel?
The border command is essentially just another police force, isn't it? To just be dealing with immigration. I fail to see how it's new. I'm not entirely sure how it's new. We have that already. We have a border force. We live in a world where if you say there is a problem with this level of illegal immigration, you're immediately branded right-wing. I'm not right-wing. I'm nothing of the sort. But I can recognise a problem when I see it. That's a problem. That's too many people coming here illegally, undocumented, lost into a system. That's not a good thing. That can't possibly be a good thing. If Keir Starmer is going to throw a lot more people at it, then yeah, that's a good thing. But it's hardly an innovation, is it? Immigration courts in this country have been absolutely crucified. They've been savagely cut. Where you may have dealt with 100 cases in a week before, you're now dealing with 10 because you don't have the judges, you don't have the barristers, you don't have the solicitors.
Same.
I mean, it's if you decimate the system by which these applications are processed, well, then you're going to create a circumstance in which the applications build up and build up and build up.
That's why we have a backlog.
Exactly. At the moment, the CPS estimates that we have about 75,000 cases in the Crown Court. The government would say 70, the CPS would say about 75. I'd say they'd know better given they're prosecuting them all. They would say about 75,000 in the Crown Court, the backlog. That's up from 39,000 in 2020. Now, that's just the Crown Court. If the same thing is happening in the immigration courts, how are we ever recovering from that?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast here on GB News with Martin and Anne.
Yeah, it's 9:40 and dozens of flights were delayed at Heathrow Airport as emergency services evacuated Terminal 2 after spotting a suspicious item there.
Yeah, according to reports, there was a crush of people as the terminal then reopened. What was it all about? Is it still ongoing? Is it going to cause some sort of domino effect that might affect you? Let's talk to the man who knows. He's joining us now from Kefalonia in Greece. Travel correspondent for The Independent, Simon Calder. Hello there.
Oh, hello. Yes, I am working here very hard indeed, but it is a beautiful day. The breeze is drifting gently across the Mediterranean, and I'm sure it's very much the same for you and Martin. Anyway, lovely to see you. But yes, the new government, same old travel chaos, I'm afraid. And if I can just talk you back, this was just over 24 hours ago. As you will know, of course, in the UK, as in many countries, we have open access to airports. That means that there's always a chance that people could bring a dangerous item in. The police, who are constantly sweeping all the way through airports along with security staff to make sure that there isn't anything untoward happening, saw a suspicious package. At that point, my understanding is that they evacuated all the land side people. So this was, well, we can see the problems there. If you were coming into the UK, you were held in a queue because they didn't want people out in the area before the security check and after passport control, if you see what I mean. If you're coming in, it's after passport control. If you're going out, it's before the security check. That was the area that was evacuated, and that immediately meant, well, of course, suddenly you had thousands, probably tens of thousands of people, all very keen to get through the security check and onto their flight as soon as possible. Airlines were stuck in a difficult position. What do? Do you wait for passengers? But that's going to jeopardize the timing for all the people who are there. And let's just take one of the flights, Singapore Airlines to Singapore. If you delay that departure, then you are jeopardizing all manner of connections, some of them as tight as 1 hour in Singapore for people trying to get to Australia. Or do you wait for the passengers on the grounds that it wasn't their fault? Very, very messy times. And yet one more reminder that there is simply no limit, and to the things that can go wrong when you are travelling.
And Simon, two pressing matters of a certain football match today. I notice on the sign there, Dusseldorf was one of the destinations mentioned. Might this affect Brits trying to get out to Germany to watch the match today?
OK, well, this is only Terminal 2. That's the main hub for Lufthansa and its subsidiary Eurowings flying into Dusseldorf. So there would have been some people who were delayed or possibly actually missed their flight, but I'm pretty sure that given the importance of being there by their time, 8 p.m. tonight, people will have found an alternative way of getting there. But yeah, pressure on flights really, really tight today. And in the past hour or so, Ryanair has come out and said, we've got air traffic control staff shortages across Europe. They say that yesterday, 15% of their first wave of flights were delayed because of air traffic control slots. So it's going to be tough. And in particular, Fridays, Saturdays in Europe, absolute top pressure, and we still don't have the resources in place to cope with all the demands.
Now, Mount Etna has been erupting and threatening to do so for a bit longer. Is that having an effect on flights?
Again, we saw really big problems yesterday. Hundreds of flights going in and out of Catania Airport. Now, if you know the beautiful island of Sicily, this is the city at the eastern end. It's just south of the magnificent Mount Etna, the highest active volcano in Europe. However, it's been a little overactive in the past few days. That has been producing ejections all the way up to about 2.5 miles. That brings ash into the equation. Of course, you can't fly, as we all know from that great volcano, Eyjafjallajökull, back in 2010. Ash presents a problem to flying. They greatly reduced the number of flights, and as a result, many people are waking up this morning either still in Sicily, which would be lovely because they've got a free extension of their holiday, or in the UK because their flights were among those cancelled, places like Bristol and Luton.
Can I just quickly ask you why you're in Kefalonia? Is it anything? I mean, I hope you're on holiday, but is it anything to do at all with the awful fires that seem to be breaking out on some of the Greek islands?
It's not. I was hoping to get in ahead of those. Yeah, look, and as you know, I'm always on holiday pretending to work, and it's always a great pleasure to talk to you and Martin. So this doesn't count as work for me. It's fun. But yeah, islands getting busier and busier. We saw on neighbouring island of Zante a week ago, we saw a big wildfire that was successfully put out. They've got really good systems in place. They fly seaplanes out to the sea, pick up water, fly them inland, douse the flames, and then go back and repeat as necessary. It was across on the far side of Greece, the island of Kos, very close to the Turkish shore, where we saw the biggest problems earlier this week. And indeed, there were thousands of people evacuated from the resort of Kardamina, and they effectively had to spend all night up and about. They were taken to a hotel reception, but that was just a precaution. And of course, July last year was when we saw the really serious wildfires across Rhodes, with 20,000 holidaymakers evacuated. Going to be a long, hot summer.
It is, isn't it? Very hot on those islands too. Well, if you are indeed managing to get any days as holiday, then do enjoy them while you're there, won't you? Lovely to talk to you as ever, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's always such fun, isn't he?
Yeah.
Just like, wherever he is, he knows exactly what's going on.
I mean, I know that's his job, but he pops up in a different part of the world every time we speak to him.
Lovely fella.
Yeah, smashing. OK, do stay with us. Lots more to talk about. In fact, we're going to be looking at Meghan and Harry. Sorry about
that. Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
We've been talking about the White House is concerned with playing down concerns about the health of President Biden, who's apparently taken to freezing during public events. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was seen herding the president back into a photo with world leaders after he shuffled aimlessly away from the group. In the last few days, videos and images of the president freezing at a fundraising event went viral, but the White House stated that they were deceptively edited cheap fakes. With me now, again, is my panel, the historian and broadcaster Tessa Dunlop and the associate comment editor of The Telegraph, Mujaz Ahmed. Mujaz, I mean, you are a journalist. What about this idea that in some way the images could be fake?
They could be fake, and some of them will be fake. But the reason these AI images or AI videos or weirdly edited videos are a problem for the White House is that people have seen enough of Biden freezing in real life.
It's not going away, this one. It's perception versus reality, but as Mustafa said, it doesn't matter because it's now become Biden's reality, which is bushfighting these questions about his ability connected to his age. I don't understand where you go from here. He's got a vice president who isn't presidential material, who I think polls worse than he does, despite these, you would call them ageist. In many ways, it's about his competence, isn't it?
It can make a big difference when the president whose competence, mental competence, is under question is running on the matter of competence itself. They're trying to paint Trump as being incompetent, as being not presidential, as being unable to lead, while they have a candidate who struggles to get off the stage. Yeah. That's the issue for them. And it's not really about age. He's not much older than Trump, as you say. It's about the appearance of age.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Martin and Anne. We've got breaking news, which you'll be very interested in. Jeremy Hunt has announced that he's ruling himself out of the Conservative leadership race.
Which I think is a bit like me ruling myself out of the England team for later on today. I don't think he was a serious runner or rider for that role of all the names that have cropped up thus far. Perhaps I'm being harsh. Maybe he just wants a bit of a quiet life.
I think after going through what the Tories have just been through, they must feel so dispirited after all the effort they have clearly put in. I don't know, you could understand him thinking, let somebody else do that job.
There's and the names on the list now, Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick, they're the pro-Farage right-wing, anti-Farage right-wing, Kemi Badenoch, Priti Patel, the centrists, James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat, who I think could be a bit of a dark horse.
Well, that's something that's going to keep us talking for a long time. OK, we were hoping to go down to Downing Street and see what's going on there, but they're all very busy looking at the cabinet ministers arriving. So let's talk about...
Yeah, Prince Harry, your favourite, and Meghan Markle, also your second favourite, because they're both accused of treating life like a prom event as they try to break into show business. And that's according to the editor-at-large for The Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths.
Who joins us now. Hello there. So what's this all about? Why has this suddenly come... I know there's been this recent award that was going to be made to Harry, and there are a lot of people who felt that he didn't deserve to even be considered for it. Good morning, by the way.
So what it is, good morning. So it's another day, another Meghan and Harry event that may or may not be inappropriate. And this one is the Pat Tillman Award. It's a military award. And Pat Tillman was a US Army officer who gave up his NFL contract. He actually had an NFL contract. He gave up a $3 million NFL contract to go to Afghanistan, where sadly he died. So he's a very serious veteran, and his mother now oversees this award. And Harry's going to receive this award, but his mother, Pat Tillman's mother, does not approve because she feels Harry's too controversial. She hinted that the links between Harry and his military associations are becoming increasingly tenuous. Of course, he has the Invictus Games, but it's been actually quite a long time since he was in the army himself. And so there's this sort of aura around the event now that's become sort of negative. And it seems like a bit of an inappropriate event for him to attend.
Yeah, and there's also been a huge backlash from the veteran community itself. They really don't feel that Harry has any part in telling them how to celebrate US veterans. And they've got a point, haven't they, Charlotte?
I think so. So the reason I said that life is becoming a bit like a high school prom for these two is because previously he did the Living Legends of Aviation Award, and that was another tenuous link, but it sort of didn't matter because it was a very silly award anyway. I mean, John Travolta was there, it was Hollywood, there was a fake prince from Austria. It was a sort of silly event, so we kind of let him get away with that one. But this is actually very serious. And, you know, there's a grieving mother involved. And she's saying, look, you know, I don't know if you're filming your Netflix documentary, but you can't just make life about sort of promoting yourself, because sometimes there's a serious message behind these events that you attend. And Serena Williams is presenting the award, and she's a very good friend of Meghan Markle. So I have to think, I wonder if Meghan's got her fingerprints on this.
OK, Charlotte, we're going to have to leave it there and let our viewers make up their minds. Thank you so much for joining us at the last minute. Just to remind you to stay tuned, because Cabinet is assembling in number 10, and we're going to be covering it completely for you. Coming up, Ben and Emily will help you through it. Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. A cool and showery weekend to come. There could be some water on the roads. We do have a rain warning in for parts of Scotland this morning, particularly northeastern Scotland. But there's also some heavy outbreaks of rain across eastern areas of England, parts of North Wales too. And many of us are likely to see a shower through today. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around as well. In any sunshine, though, it's not going to feel too bad, particularly across the south coast, where we're a bit more sheltered from the breeze at time. So here we could see 19, possibly 20 degrees, but for most of us will be in the mid, possibly lower teens, with some fairly persistent rain lingering, particularly across northern areas into this evening. So further heavy rain to come throughout this evening, particularly across northeastern areas of Scotland. I think the heaviest rain there will still be through this morning. It will get a little bit lighter through the day, but there could still be some localised flooding issues. Showers across Northern Ireland, much of southern Scotland into northern areas of England as well later on this evening. Fewer in the way of showers as we head further south, particularly towards the south coast. There will be a bit of a breeze through the English Channel as well throughout this evening too. Now overnight tonight, that low pressure that's bringing that wet weather will slowly push away to the north and east, and behind it we will see clearer skies developing as we head into Sunday quite widely across the UK. We start to pick up more of a westerly breeze, so across western areas with more cloud around here and some showers too, and milder